right, good evening, everyone. Welcome.
All right, well, we're back from closed session. And our first agenda item will be the board mission statement.
All right, so the mission statement is we will develop policy that is representative of our community, set goals, and lead our district by collaborating. And then our three agreements or beliefs as a board too are up on the board. Stand up and own it, which is that individual responsibility. Power team, which is really that collaboration as we, not me, together as a group. And then that growth mindset, or the mindset of like passion for learning, passion to get better as a community, but also as a board.
All right. Next item is consent agenda. So we would need a motion to approve. It was in our packet, the items that we're approving. Any conversation or question first? Okay.
Hi, you guys ready for it?
Yeah. And we'll take a motion to approve.
Just a quick thing. I think in the minutes I'm reading through, some of the items are just the agenda item, and it doesn't mention the specific, like in when we voted for a hire or that I guess the name of the hire, just as an example,
Okay.
should be in there.
Okay.
And not just what the agenda item states. It's not a big thing, but the minutes are supposed to reflect our actions. So.
Noted.
All right, thanks, Steve. Any other questions? All right, well then I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll second.
Kathy?
Yes.
Geckman?
Yes.
Hawk? Kowalski, yes.
Yes.
All right, our next item is board members share a moment of pride. So I don't know, Vicki, would you like to go first this time?
Sure. Other than seeing the community, I was early for the North County Fest. I didn't stay real long, but it's just always fun to see the community out and about and together and having fun. But also while I weekend, seeing everybody in the tent, if you will. I don't work there because in my Kiwanis Cheese Curd tent, but it was fun to see everybody there.
Yeah.
For the cause, right?
Absolutely.
Other than going to North Bonnie Fest, no recent events that I really attended, I guess, because it's kind of a slow time of the year, but I just wanted to reflect on in the materials for tonight. We're going to talk about it later, but the continuous improvement plans, the cultural playbook plans, and panorama and strategic plan, just how we're being proactive as a district. I just look forward to seeing the progress of each of those going forward, and then the results that come of those. I think it's a great thing. So just wanted to shout out about that.
I've taken a little different this year. I thought it's the last meeting of the school year, in terms of starting the next school year. So kind of thought back about this last year and a little bit about going forward. So I wrote this out so I wouldn't forget. It's just a couple minutes. I don't know when it takes very long, but when you think about where we were at the start of last June and where we are now, it's pretty amazing to me. We have a new leadership team that includes a new superintendent and 2 new principals, a team that I believe is substantially stronger and more cohesive than the past teams. The citizens of the district stepped up and passed a significant referendum to improve our facilities, and our buddy Dave put off retirement to help us through the construction process. Dr. Nino has put in place a standards-based and thorough hiring process that has produced great results, including hiring a new high school principal, dean of students, activity director, football coach, and several new teachers, to name a few. We have made progress under Dr. Nino in understanding the roles and responsibility of charter schools and are adding a new charter high school. There is a real commitment by Dr. Nino and the board to team building and supporting the staff, which I think is absolutely critical. And as Terry just mentioned, we're in the process of developing a strategic plan, key performance indicators, and the type of team atmosphere needed to really drive long-term improvement in our students' performance. So those are just a handful of the positive changes that are in process, and it really has been, I think, a great year. But now as I kind of look ahead, as the infrastructure needed to drive real change is really being put into place, I think the hard work really begins. We are all aware, for years, our school district has performed poorly on both state tests and the SAT. I believe we now have the school administration team in place that can and will drive the changes necessary to improve student performance. But then I started thinking about ourselves as a board. And after the meeting we had on high-performing boards with CISA 6 this month, I think we have some clear directions on how to become more effective as a board. To move from a passive school board to an actively engaged school board that works in conjunction with Dr. Nino and his team to drive meaningful change and produce results our kids of our district deserve. So as we begin the new school year, I challenge each one of us, and I include myself more than anybody in that, to step up our performance and really hold ourselves accountable for the success of the students, not just putting it off on administration and teachers. But I think it's time that the board takes accountability for the future success of the students.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Mine was just to mention, graduation, and it's always, I've said it numerous times over the years, but to me, it's the most important day of the year for a school board member, and this one was another great day. And what I especially like about it is, I think virtually every year it's been 100% attendance or presence by the entire board, which I think is great, and it sends a message also to the staff and community how important it is to us. So.
Yeah, I had graduation down as well, and this is echoing what Steve had said, but also Dr. Matt, excellent job on your inaugural graduation in your new role. I thought the event was great. It was great to see. I mean, the house was packed. Yeah, right. And Dave and your team, I mean, the house was packed. so great job. But I think that's just what Rick said and everyone here shared. That's just a great end to a very successful year. So I'm just looking forward to next year. All right. Our next item is clerk's report.
So correspondences, there are none, but, a big thank you to Wayne and Janice Shingen for $50 backpack buddies. And then also $1,000 from All Tools NVT.
I got a quick question about that. Both the Shingens are donating almost every month, but with All Tools, anybody know the connection with the district that makes them so interested and involved in this program?
I do not.
To find out.
Well, that's fine. It's just, it's really cool to see that not only them every month, but the amounts that they've been donating is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I should know that answer and that we talked about it somewhere, but off the top of my head, I don't recall.
Okay. Yeah, maybe if we could find out, because if it's somebody in the community that has that connection, I'd run into them. I'd love to say something to them.
Right.
Dave, do you know anything?
I don't, and like Vicki said, we did talk about that a couple of years ago, and I don't remember.
And it's been happening that long, where?
It's been a while, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Vicki. And our next one is citizens' comments. That's where anyone can share a comment for the board to listen in on. If they do decide, please just state your name and address, and just know that the board's here to listen. We won't be responding during this time, but happy to hear what everyone has to say. So, don't know if anyone has any citizens' comments. All right, I think we're good. We'll move on. All right, our next one is superintendent's report, so.
All right.
All you.
Yeah, we got a really great agenda here. We got a lot of great things to address and share and learn more about together as Collective Whole. So, but we're gonna first kick off with starting lineup with Horton Insurance Group update. So Tim and Maria, if you wanna jump in and we can get, and I'm just gonna say this will bleed into a little bit number 2, the healthcare and wellness discussion as well, Vicki, just so that we have that understanding as we're walking through this as well. Okay?
All right, thanks, Dr. Matt. Appreciate being here.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Yeah. I almost wore that same shirt today. That would have been really good.
Yeah. We called each other at least
You would
this
have
morning,
worn
right?
the same.
Yeah.
And the funny part is I bought a shirt just like that.
Yeah.
And then I was shopping one day. I'm like, oh, I really like that shirt. And I bought another one.
Right.
I already have one. I'm like, well, I like it a lot, apparently. So next time we'll plan on.
There we go. Cool.
But I'm Tim Deaton with the Horton Group, and I was here last year when we kind of went through the renewal and the insurance, and we wanted to, at least I wanted to, Maria and Matt, we wanted to come up and kind of give you an update. Our renewal's coming up, for January, but we're self-funded now. So we get a ton of information. We have eyes and a line of sight of where we're heading. So I put together kind of a packet that we can go through today. But it's more meaningful because I think if I would have come here last year, anything I would have said would have been speculation. It would have been, well, what do you think the renewal is going to be? Well, I'll give you a range. Here we've got reporting. We have reporting from a couple of years ago. We're actually able to do some modeling and some renewal projection based upon your actual experience. So it's really helpful. But one of the other reasons we wanted to come up is that our current vendor, Humana, has announced that they're leaving the marketplace. So we need to find a new home for January. So we're already, probably, in the throes of all the marketing and the results, I think, just showed up this week, or they were due late last week. So I think we've got most of them in. Now we're going to compile it. And, I think from a timing perspective, we'd like to kind of get all of our ducks in a row, kind of sit down with the team and go through our options and then bring that back to you and try to have a decision. I would say, probably August timeframe would be, ideal, no later than August, at least an idea where we would go from a third party administrator. Stop loss would be a little bit later because our renewal will come in and our marketing will get going around September, but just a replacement to Humana. So we'll have that kind of in place. But what I have in the packet today, I have an updated medical and ARCS reporting. I've got a 2024 renewal projection. I've got a marketing list of all the carriers that we went to and will go to, and give an idea of just the depth of options that you have. When can you compare that to the fully insured world? Those are dwindling, right? We have some planned saving estimates. What is that transition going to look like? What other levers can we pull? What are other districts doing to try to control cost? And we have other private sector businesses that are doing some really unique things. I did throw in some renewal history just to kind of show you where we've been. And then for the group last week, we did just a conversation around changing the tiers. Right now we have single family. What does that look like if we do a single limited family, full family, or maybe we do 4 tier rates: single, employee child, employee spouse, and full family. Because again, as I told Maria and Matt, we're going to have people that are going to be winners in the situation where they maybe will pay less, and some that may pay more because they have a larger family. And then we'll end it, just kind of with our renewal timeline of where we're going to be for the rest of the year. And then if you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to, ask, and, you won't insult me by interrupting. And this is a meeting for us to kind of, share information and, try to make sure that, we are self-funded. So, We have a lot of information we can get our hands on, and we are in total control. We have the ability to make changes and switch on a dime if we want to. We can take education, we can do little things in wellness and try to encourage folks to do, more consumerism, and be better. I think that there are always going to be patients, but there are values in healthcare that exist, and how do we, steer people to that? So it's an ongoing process, but what you're looking at here on page 1, and it's a real busy chart, I'll walk you through it. This is what we call our loss ratio report. This is a nice 1-page kind of gives you all the information around our self-funded plan. And then in the middle, is mostly just a monthly claims log. But I'll walk you from the top left-hand corner across. So the report parameters, we've got our medical administrator, which is Humana. We also have our prescription drug administration with them, and we have our stop loss. So we are kind of in a carrier model right now. We have everything bundled with one carrier. We don't have transplant coverage right now. Our specific stop loss is at that $75,000. We've got a 12-12 contract, meaning anything that's incurred in 12, paid in 12 is paid in the contract. And when we move to a new contract, will be a 24-12 contract. So there'll be no, loss of coverage. It'll flow to the next contract. Our network is with Humana as well, and there's the national point of service. In the middle are our premium equivalents. So again, we have 2-tier rates. We've got employee only and full family. That is what I would call our funding rates. And then on the far right would be just our fixed fees, which would be medical administration with Humana, employee stop loss, family stop loss. We have employee aggregate and family aggregate. And the aggregate coverage is an umbrella policy that sits over top of your stop loss, that if everyone goes to the doctor and we have just a really rough claims year, we would have a cap over top of that. It's typically 125% of expected claims. So you have about 25% umbrella coverage. So in case, we have a lot of claims under the specific, that would count toward the aggregate. Anything over that 75 will get reimbursed back to us. Below is kind of like a running checkbook, right? You get your fixed fees. So those are going to be our medical administration, stop loss, and aggregate stop loss premium on a monthly basis. So I'll give you total fixed cost next to that. In the middle is our variable. So medical claims, prescription claims, and then any reimbursements that we've received. Those are claims that are over that 75. That's a ebb and flow each month. So that would be on a monthly basis. We then add up the total variable cost and then add it to the fixed cost to give us total plan cost. We then have our enrollment next to that, and then we bump that up against the funding rates to give us what we're budgeting on a monthly basis. The loss ratio column is anything over 100 is not good, anything below is favorable. So as you can see, we're running a little fever for the first 5 months here. We're about 121.64. I would attribute that to we've had probably a little bit more activity in the large claim area than maybe anticipated, which happens. I mean, that's why we have health insurance. The good thing is that once somebody hits that 75, any claims that are above that get reimbursed back to us. So we should see, I don't want to jinx this, but we should see this maybe leveling out a little bit as we have activity, unless we're not getting any new shock claims or stop loss claims. On the bottom is just some key indicators. We've got the average single count employees at 38. Our average family enrollment is at 122. So our average, for the first 5 months is 160 total employees. We've got our total plan cost in the center, our plan funding, and then we have a deficit. So right now we're about $345,000 in deficit, and that equates to that 121.64. And then next to that would just be, hey, what does it look like on a per employee per year currently? Our fixed fees are at that 5120. Our variables at that 24,000. Total cost is at 29,133. I think in our public sector world, I think the average that I see is probably 25 to 30 in cost per employee. Any questions on this chart?
Just a real quick one, on the family enrollment, 122, is that all the members of the families?
That is just that would be the employees that have family coverage.
Okay.
I don't have the member count, but I would say typically it's like 2.5 of what your total is, so I think we're probably, even though Maria, what the member count is, I know.
That's fine, I just curious.
We'll have the Corey fee out soon, so I'll know it then. But yeah, these are all averages and they're just counting employees, whether they have single or family coverage.
So like with the variable cost analysis, like January was pretty low.
Yeah, and what we anticipated was that we were gonna have run out claims because we were with WCA.
Okay.
So any claim that was incurred in November and December was gonna be paid by, UMR and WCA. And then you'd have some part of a lag where claims wouldn't be paid, because typically a claim has about a 45-day lag time, 45 to 60. So, and we had I think we had activity more sooner than I thought we'd have, because February was, I anticipated that maybe being a little lower. But it is what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's go to page 2. Another page with lots of numbers, so I'll walk you through this slowly, but this is, our 12-step process in walking you through an actuarial formula that helps us determine how we set rates. So I guess when you're dealing with the DOL, the Department of Labor, and we're taking premiums from employees, we have to kind of show our math if someone comes and asks, right? Why are you charging, premiums, and how are you basing them off of it? So this is our actuarial method. So what we do is we take 3 years of experience. We have equal 12-month periods. So obviously the one on the left is going to be the oldest period, one in the middle, and then the newest is going to be on the right. So line 1 is gross paid claims. That's going to be medical and pharmacy or RX claims on a 12-month period. So we're anywhere between 4.5 million to 3.9. Line 2 is at $75,000 specific. We took any claims that were over that amount out. So that's why you see line 1 minus line 2 gives you line 3, and that would be claims with catastrophic removed. We then look at the benefit, if we made any adjustments, so that we can kind of, adjust those accordingly to our changes in our plan design. We didn't have any for the 3 years, so that stayed the same. So line 5 is the same as line 3. We then apply a trend factor because claims that are 3 years old, need to be kind of trended forward, because we are projecting, at this point, we're going to project 18 months into the future. So we need to trend those up, and trend right now is at about 9%. So line 7 is line 5 multiplied by that 9%. And then we look at the total employees for the entire 12-month period, and we add that up for each month. So we take line 7 divided by line 8, and that gives us a per employee per month projected claim rate. So you get that 2,300, 1,727, and that 1,995. We then weight it. So we weight, the oldest at a lower number, so we have it at 5, the middle experience period of 35, and then the newest experience period is at 60. So line 11 is that weighted amount per employee per month claim rate, and then we add those together to give us a per or combined projected per employee per month claim rate of that $1,917. We multiply that times 12, and then we go to line 3. So line 3 is at 1917 multiplied by 12, gets us $23,005. We then add in our administration fee on a per employee per year basis. So for our employees, we've got an estimated amount that we're looking at with the people that we sent it out to of $45 per employee per month for administration, or $540 per year. We then take our stop loss premium. We're estimating about a 15% increase to the specific which is our 75, and then aggregate at 5%. That's kind of an average that we see out there in the marketplace. So on a per employee per year, stop loss is at that 5630. We add those together, that gives us that 29,176 number. If we have any new laser liability, that means anybody that would be over the 75, or maybe the underwriter would say, well, for this person, we're gonna move the specific stop loss to, let's say, 100 or 150. They would push risk back to you. For that, they would give you premium savings. So at times it might be ideal to take a laser if we know that the person isn't gonna have that much claims, because we have case management notes and we kind of can see what the predictive modeling is showing for that. Or we can protect ourselves by, taking that and not exposing ourselves to, a higher amount at a later point. So that 176 number, we bump that up against our current rates of that 23,950, and we're projecting a 21.82% increase, or about 830,000. Again, early projection, but it's kind of where we're at. And I talked to Maria last week when we had our little conference call, and we were talking like, what in the world would it look like under a fully insured model? It'd be much higher. We had a group that had a 72% increase last year. We got it down to 45 and they were happy. So, I mean, it's just the fully insured market. I think, it's just the carriers are shrinking. Your options are, United Healthcare, which is WCA for the public sector, Anthem, and some regional players. And you're going to be with one of them. So you just don't have many options to go to. So if we go to page 4, this is what our new world looks like from, what's possible. So this is our, the bid list that we go out to for our self-funded clients. We've got, 20 reinsurance carriers, so when we go, we're obviously leaving Humana, we're going to send out our stop loss to the market, and we'll get back some competitive rates from, a handful of these groups. We just need, a couple willing dance partners so we can kind of put against each other and try to get the best deal. In the middle is the third-party administrators. So we've got, 6 there that we went out to replace Humana. And then on the pharmacy side, we have another, 12 carriers that we can go out to. And I would say that the pharmacy world is probably where the most innovation is occurring. The ability to take advantage of manufacturers' coupon programs or manufacturer assistance programs. There are companies that basically will come in and handhold the members and take advantage of those programs. It might require them to share some financial information, but in the end, the medication is free for them, and it's either discounted up to 50 or 60%, or it's free from the manufacturers. There's also the ability to work with international pharmacies and have a mail order service where you're importing medication. And again, it's about a 50 to 60% savings, and it's the same drugs, and they arrive, just like they would from a specialty pharmacy, at the member's home, or they could have it, shipped to a secure facility if they don't want it sitting outside at their house. But that's occurring now. But we can take advantage of the market forces to do that. So page 5 is what I think is possible from going through this change. As I told, Matt and Maria last week, it was like, well, I know Humana was our first stop, and they had kind of a package that really offered us the ability to get into self-funding. And I knew that maybe we'd stay there 1 or 2 years, and then we'd look and try to get to some place where we maybe have a little bit more flexibility, where we can plug and play, different vendors in to make it, a little bit more competitive. It makes the offering, the ability to save money and maybe keep benefits at a certain level. But, from our administration, I'm anticipating about a 0 to 5 to 7% increase, because we have run out claims with Humana, so we're going to pay the run out there. But I did get 2 vendors that are going to give us a 3-month rate credit on the admin cost. So that will take away some of the runout claims that we're paying Humana, but still, it'll be a slight increase there. PPO network, this is pretty low estimate in my opinion, but about a 3%, improvement to where we're at today. And it could be anywhere from, 8 to 10 once we get everything back. So we're looking at about 84 to 168,000 in the PPO network efficiency. And then when we look at the pharmacy world, right now we're spending, I think over the last average, 3 years, it was about 1.2 million in RX, which is not uncommon. It's just, prescription drugs are expensive. If you watch TV, you've seen them all on TV. And those are the medications that when they say, oh, if you need help paying for it, contact AbbVie, or they have those patient assist programs. That's what we're going to try to take advantage of. So through improved in pricing and improved rebates and the ability to kind of do some unique things around sourcing medication, we're anticipating about a $300,000 to $500,000 savings. So all in all, that $350,000 to $640,000, is attainable, I believe, with the transition to a new vendor, which, again, cuts into our, 800,000, if we can cut that by 2/3, that makes the budgeting process a little easier. We're gonna be cognizant of, we're running a little bit of a fever this year on the current side, so we're running a little bit of a deficit, but trying to make, that 10% number that we talked about, work, and we'll, flush that out as we get going here. But we're probably, I think last year when we did this, it's usually September, October, I think, when we get everything kind of locked down from stop loss. So we'll end up having June, July, August, and perhaps September claims, definitely August claims. So we have 3 more months of data to get that we'll be able to plug into our model and into our reporting just to see where we're at.
This is just a little question. What does PBM?
Oh, I can read that way too much in our world. Pharmacy benefit manager.
Okay.
No one can do acronyms.
I know
like
what the
insurance
RX
world.
is, but I didn't know what that was. All right.
Well, I got all kinds of it. You want to know all? Well, I'll confuse. We call it alphabet soup in our world because we use it so often. So I apologize for
I
that.
know
But
how the school district
That's
is
exactly
too.
how the school.
Yeah.
It's in learning a new language.
Yeah, it really is. And you guys use it like we do it. The vernacular just kind of flows freely amongst educators and members of the school board. But when you're dealing with parents, I'm sure they're sometimes over their head a little bit. So apologies for that. Pharmacy benefit managers are on page 4 there. They're the ones that would do the if you go to the pharmacy, you give them your card, they run it through, and it does everything behind the scenes. They'll do mail order and then some of the other unique things that we talked about. Page 6, just looking at what other districts are doing and looking at our plan. I mean, we have a really rich plan. I mean, a $300, $600 deductible plan with 100% coverage. It's pretty unique, in my opinion, because the out-of-pockets that we have are really geared around the co-pays. So there's no co-insurance. So other districts, I don't know, Marie, you said Fond du Lac is more than 1,000.
I didn't get confirmation.
You didn't? Okay.
I'm not really sharing, but, yes, if my memory serves me correctly, it's 1,000, 2,000 in Fond du Lac. They just upped it.
Okay, I did find my Excel file and I was gonna send it to you, but I couldn't save it, so I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
But it's got all, it's 2000 through 22, so it's not updated for 22, 23.
They typically don't swing that much for me.
Yeah, not too much, but I'll shoot that to you and be able to get eyes on site. But I would say what we're seeing, I think 1,000, 2,000 is pretty average. I think the percentage of co-insurance when I did it for all the districts is at that 95%. And then when you look at out of pockets, I would say 2,500 to 5,000 was the average. So you have some latitude. I think, again, I'm conscious and, recognize that, we're in a attract and retain as well. So you don't want to, hit the members too much, but we do have some, latitude. And I think where we get the biggest bang for our buck, and if you look down the list, it's going to be that co-insurance amount. Having some level of cost share after deductible will go a long way. Then, the district would pay 90%, and the member or employee would pay 10% up to whatever amount we determine, but that would be, something that would give us, a little bit more bang for the buck. And I included on page 7, just our current plan design, schedule of benefits. Any questions on that? Again, no decisions today, just more getting this out in front of you for food for thought as we go through this process. And, again, I think in my world, it's continually adding more data and then getting to a point where it's like, all right, now we have our number, come back and let's see how that works in the budget, what tweaks we can make to kind of, bring it all together.
I just have I guess just, if you bear with me, more of a historical comment as to why we have a very rich plan. And it goes back way before my time to where during the union, teachers union times, they negotiated very heavy to save on benefits. And there were times even gave up a bit of a salary raise in order to keep the strong benefits. So it's always been a strong feeling from the employees, and it's, in more recent times, it's attracted, people are still gonna take the job for a variety of reasons and stuff, but they, when they find out what the coverage is, that excites them as part of the decision. So, and I'm not saying, I'm in the insurance world too, and costs go up and things go up, but I would just, and I'm not gonna be under this plan anymore. So I think I can speak a little more freely, but I'd be cautious to not take too huge of a jump, because they've been so good and so close for so long that, going over the cliff.
Yep. Like I said, I appreciate that. And again, I think it's the history that you have, which is great. And, I know there are districts out there where they would give up salary to not have benefit changes. And, that's, I've seen that in other ones. And I look at this, and this is almost like an old Teamsters plan back from the 80s. This is the one that my stepfather had when we were growing up, in, $200 deductible and 100% thereafter. So, it's great coverage. So I applaud you guys for keeping it in place, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't bring you options, and we can have discussions and banter.
And in my world, so I run a small health office, and really the average, we just did this data within this last year. The average person that comes into our clinic, their deductible is $5,000, $7,500. Average.
Yeah, private sector, I would agree to that.
It's, yeah. I think this is great, and if we can do this for our employees, that's wonderful, but they also have to realize how good they have it. Seriously, with that, that is unheard of.
Yeah, and and we had the HRA, if you remember. And we did that because it was the only way we could save money on the fully insured premium. And you guys were kind of quasi self-funded back then, right? You had a little skin in the game, and you were reimbursing members. And, you probably had higher utilization because you're, a school district, but, not everybody met that, full amount of the HRA, and it allowed you to kind of save money on the premium. But, since we have now a $75,000 HRA, right, in hindsight, we got rid of the HRA just because it was going to be another step for employees to go through and then reimburse. It was actually kind of I wouldn't say a waste of money. It was like we were going to pay 2 administrators and we didn't need to. So on paper, this looks really great. You're out of pocket. I think at $48,000 to $9,000, I think it's high, but I don't know if anyone's ever going to reach that because it's not co-insurance driven. It's all co-pays, and you have to go to the doctor and urgent care a lot to get there. Definitely some things that we can consider, but that's not for today's decision. But at least wanted to get you that in front of you just to kind of show you what we're looking at and what some of the costs would be to do that. Page 8, I just updated this. This is something we shared with you guys last year, just kind of a renewal history going back to 2016. You know, we were with our UHC, WCA, we did that 1 year with WE, or a couple years, and then back to WCA. And, you know, the thing that when I tell, you know, when you're fully insured, you need to be prepared to move every year. So unfortunately, we're moving this year again, but that was not our doing. But I think in the world that we live in now, self-funded, if we can find an administrator that we really like, that has a good network and has great customer service, we then can move the stop loss behind the scenes. So the members won't see change because they don't see the stop loss vendor. It's all kind of coordinated, you know, with the insurance carrier and the third-party administrator. So it really makes it easy to kind of manage the program if all you're gonna do is plug in vendors that, you know, you utilize, and you really don't make that many. You know, if we go to our new favorite third-party administrator and we're happy with them, they allow us to plug vendors in, I don't ever see why we would ever leave them. I mean, that groups that are with the same vendor for, you know, 10 years. We took the Pier self-funded. They were with Oxyan for a couple of years and then they went to Anthem. So I think they're on maybe 10 years of self-funded now. So it's worked well for them. But, you know, it's ebb and flow. And then page 9 is just what does that the rates look like if we go from our current 2-tier, which is single family, to either a 3-tier, which would be a single employee plus one. Now, employee plus one could be one child or a spouse. So if I've got, you know, Tim Deaton and 2 kids, I would be in full family in that scenario. Below is 4-tier, and that's where you have single, employee and spouse, employee and children, and then you have full family. Which I would say in our fully insured world, 4-tier is probably the most common. Self-funded, you know, I think the districts that have 2-tier rates, you know, it's hard to insert because then you got to all of a sudden you go from, you know, $2,295 to $2,388 for a family. So that's where I think it always is like, oh, you know, now we got to increase, or how do we do that without, you know, having a mutiny on our hands? Because those 89 people are like, oh, now I got to pay more because you're inserting, you know, 2 other tiers. But I could argue, full family, you're going to have more coverage. You're covering more people. Because the people with employee plus one are like, well, wait a minute, I'm not full family, why am I paying more? So. Any questions on page 9? Like I said,
Again, possible options.
Yeah, just throwing it out there so it's on your guys' radar, because I think, you know, it's one of the things that, you know, we'll probably talk about once we narrow down kind of who we think is going to be our new administrator. Obviously the renewal part of it, and then, you know, plan designs, and then how we're going to, you know, fund that. So those are kind of the decision points that we would have. So on page 10 is just our renewal timeline. You know, June, July here, we're doing kind of our pre-renewal meetings. We got the preliminary budget out in front of you. We got kind of our renewal strategy of what we're doing with the third-party administrators and the pharmacy benefit managers. And then obviously we'll evaluate all the proposals and get that on paper and have that probably out to Matt and Maria here probably in the next couple of weeks. I think, you know, August is where we're going to do the stop loss marketing. That's when that's going to start. We're going to evaluate stop loss carrier proposals. We'll update the projection, renewal projection. If there's any ancillary benefits that are up for renewal, we'll do that, and then we'll consider plan design changes. September is probably when we make all of our final decisions. So that's probably when you'll see me again. I can come back in August and give you an update, or wherever we're gonna, you know, I think, because my thought was we would have a decision or be prepared to make a decision in August. Then we'd have September, October, November, and December to implement. And 120 days is more than enough time to do so. But I'd rather get started on that early, and there'll be a couple clear favorites that I think that we'll be able to look at. One in particular is gonna be UMR, which is where we had when we were with WCA. They're a third-party administrator owned by United Healthcare. So it'll be the same network that we had before. So I think people will be familiar with that. They allow us to plug and play. We can put in stop loss, we can put in pharmacy. There's another program that we work with. It's called RX and Go. It's a generic mail order company that, and we just put it in Barron County. It's going to save Barron about $40,000 on generic medication. And the members, which is just crazy, because they have a high deductible health plan, they're going to end up saving, I think, like 60 grand, because they're going to get the medications for free. So not only is the district or the county paying less, but the members' cost share isn't there. So it's kind of a win-win. So they're just things that are out there. Direct contracting with bundled pricing. There are providers, especially in the orthopedic world. And a case in point is OSMS, what is it? Orthopedic Surgeons, and can't remember their name is Oshkosh. And they've got their clinic and their surgery center. And they have bundled prices that they're bringing out to self-funded plans, where you would say to the members, hey, if you go to this, to practice group in this facility, you would have no cost share. So again, it's that win-win. And I think the way that we get members to, kind of acquiesce to plan suggestions is through their pocketbook, right? If I can give you something for free and we're in this together, most people, Tim Deacon would do this, if it's free, it's for me. That's kind of the Wisconsin model, right? But we're not sending them to, low-end physicians. It's going to be, great outcomes, great recommended, great facilities. So it's looking at market forces and seeing if there's a way that we can squeeze a little bit of the inefficiencies out of healthcare. So those are a couple ways that we've been doing it with other clients.
And Tim, our hands were kind of tied this last year,
Yes.
dealing with with
That was
Humana.
hard group.
Sorry.
That's okay.
With Humana.
Yeah. And the reason it is that they are the stop loss carriers. So they needed to approve everything. And they're just like, well, we can't do that. Can't have you work with an outside vendor. UMR is not going to have that same approach. And our stop loss team, as long as we can get the claims, which we will be able to, we can submit everything, so it won't be any missed opportunities for reimbursements. And that's what we'd have had here. If we'd have saved all the money, they wouldn't have reimbursed us for claims. It's like, well, that defeats the purpose. So it had to kind of run through, Humana's, system, good, bad, or indifferent.
Can any idea why Humana's leaving the market? What isn't health their main thing that they want?
It used to be. They were really strong here. I think when they entered the market, they ended up buying, remember Employers Health out of Green Bay?
Yeah.
Great company, right? They had a good market share. So they kind of entered. And then over time, United Healthcare and Anthem, and then I think the move to self-funding, a lot of the groups that they had moved to self-funding and then went to a third-party administrator. Just easier to work with. So their market share in the commercial space has shrunk. I bet we had 20 groups with them 5 years ago. I bet we have probably 4 fully insured groups now. They've just kind of moved on. I think WCA really took a lot of their public sector groups away from them. And now, they're making all their money in Medicare supplements.
Oh, okay.
Like billions of profit. It's crazy. It's the baby boomers. That's, they're all getting out of it to go. But, in our world, in the last year, we've lost WEA and Humana. It's a little scary in our world because we need more carriers because, not everybody can be self-funded. So we need more dance partners. But for you guys, you're over 100, you're at 166 people, you're perfect for self-funded. It's way better, as you can see with the discussions we're having now, we weren't having those last year. We have access to data. You know, there's programs and things that are happening in our world that we can bring to you. I mean, I'll bring you every crazy idea that I have, and you can tell me, well, you know, not for us, but hey, thanks for letting us know. But, you know, it's definitely, you know, there's disruptors in the marketplace, and it's really centered around, you know, being self-funded. So I think the move, even though maybe we're running a little bit hot this year, I think it will be in our best interest to continue, but also I think there's better days ahead.
Can we shimmy this conversation into healthcare and wellness as part of it too as well? And just like how that comes into pharmaceutical / discussions we started having. And what I mean by we, Maria, myself, Tim,
Yeah.
other people from board, in terms of like, how do we make sure that wellness is happening, or, you know,
Yeah.
at least in a way that we can provide some more insurance that our people are taking
And-
care of themselves as best they possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, wellness is a big animal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it is something that's out there. We've had a bunch of our manufacturers and here didn't, you know, they didn't go down the wellness path, because we used to do like biometrics, right? And you get the biometrics and everyone will get their scores, and you're just hoping that they're going to a doctor. You don't know if they are or not, right? And you look at the claims, you're like, well, how in the world is this happening? You know, I see all these people with risk factors. Why aren't they going to the doctor? So a couple of our groups said, you know what? We don't do anything with the biometric data that we get, right? It's not like we're going around trying to do coaching or intervening with them. So what they did, they said, wellness already exists in your health plan. Through the Affordable Care Act, preventative care has been covered at 100%. So what some of our manufacturers and a couple of our school districts and public sector groups were doing, they said, we're gonna forego the on-site, you know, biometrics, and we're gonna require employee and spouse to get an annual physical. I think the peer took it one step further. They wanted flu shots too. Before that was their wellness. You know, I guess to qualify for the wellness discount, they had to do two things: get a physical, employee and spouse, and then get your flu shot. And then you received your wellness discount. And the thought is that, boy, the insurance guy can sit in a room, we could bring healthcare professionals, but until they actually go to the doctor and they have, you know, a professional sit down with them, even though it's maybe probably for the, you know, the 12, 14 minutes, whatever those appointments last, there's still meaningful conversations. You know, they're looking at their history, they're having a real conversation of, hey, you know what, at your age, this is not good. And they're probably gonna get them on generic medication, which is very inexpensive, and it's gonna control those chronic conditions. And what we're seeing in our manufacturing world, the people weren't going to the doctor. They were doing their on-site and they would never go. So we did this 2 years ago, and I just ran some reports, and we're tracking three things: breast cancer screenings, cervical cancer screenings, and prostate cancer screenings. Every single one had an increase. And the reason is that they went to the doctor, and the doctor said, boy, you're due for this. Let's schedule it. And that's not gonna happen, you know, under a traditional wellness plan. And I'm not poo-pooing wellness. I just think that it's more of a cultural thing. It's more education. It's, you know, I think people like that kind of you rah rah. But when it comes to a self-funded health plan, boy, we have a lot of skin in the game, right? At that 75,000. And if we can catch things early, okay, we might incur some more claims, but, you know, it's gonna be appropriate use of healthcare.
How do you get a decrease in doctor visits and pharmaceuticals, you know, when so I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to the doctor, but what I'm saying is so you call that wellness when they go to the medical doctor once a year or whatever, and they get put on medication that they have to be on for life. So.
That's true. No, that's true.
So what I'm saying, and I get it, because, and so this is my world all the time, and I love people, and human beings are human beings. So if they don't have to do something, they're not gonna do it, because it's heck of a lot easier taking a pill than it is taking a 2-mile walk, okay?
True.
So I get it. But still, for everybody, yeah, why can't we somehow promote some type of actual wellness where people are getting into, yes, we do take a 2-mile walk or a 1-mile walk, or I don't know what it is.
And I think, Vicky, this has gotta be in tandem with that
Yeah.
too. You know, it can't
No,
be
I
a sole
get it.
thing, right? So And with our wellness campaign that we've had here, we get a smattering of people who want to participate or be part of it. Again, it comes back to human beings saying like, yes to this, right?
Yes, but a lot of times, so I know that there are incentives where if you do these 3 things versus go to the medical doctor, get put on whatever medications, that's awesome, whatever. How about incentives to take that 2-mile walk, maybe getting off medications because you're doing these things, which is saving us money, which is then saving them money.
Right.
That kind of incentive. So
And I think
just
that
don't know.
all goes in tandem as well. We can have a risk
Yeah.
add on the.
And I think the other thing doctors will say is like, exercise. You know, like, I mean, that's part of it too, to hear from somebody else as well,
Even with
right?
depression.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
exercise is 1.5 times more effective than an antidepressant if you could just do it on a regular basis.
I
That's
know,
new research
I
that
know.
just came out.
But we have some people who aren't doing either of those things right now. And how do we, and this could be a start or at least an option or a solution possibly to see what happens from that. And then we get more people saying, oh, the doctor's telling me I should exercise. Well, here it is. We've got all these different plans that we can provide you from our wellness committee to participate in while you're in schools too. And here's how we're gonna incentivize you within the school in addition to going to the doctor, because we know that in long-term gain, that's gonna be the preventative that we really wanna look for.
Yeah.
So, and then looking at all the different things that Tim's talking about as well as Maria's shared too, is like the barometric, some of these other things that they bring people and have that conversation. That pep talk's not gonna do it. I love to say like everybody just turns on the switch and says, yeah, now I gotta do this. Right, exactly. So I think the tandem of those two is something that we're looking at right now as a possibility, but I think that has, I think, a little more edge to it than what we've been doing. We have nothing right now in terms of holding people accountable and to that degree. And I think we just need to look at that a little bit deeper.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where I would like some of this to head.
Yeah, we've got Tasha, our wellness, she's a nurse. She was, worked at the VA for, I don't know, 20 years. So she's been on board for about 1.5 years, I think. Not quite a year, I think she's almost a year. And she's really gonna head up the population health part of it. And she's been part of the wellness committee meetings and things. And I think what we're trying to do is, wellness is so big, make it more about looking at our risk factors and trying to engage people to make better decisions, whether it's nutrition, whether it's getting active, or accessing healthcare. I mean, it's, I think what we need to probably start thinking about too is, we have access to just how we're performing as a health plan. And, making that available to members and to employees, like, hey, we're in this together.
Mhm.
This is, something that we're all trying to do. And here's what you guys can do. And, again, I think exercise, every time you go to the doctor, you exercising? Sure, you betcha I am, right? I'm sure people love me, but,
Yeah, I'm flossing my teeth too, like.
yeah. Why are they bleeding when I'm cleaning them? Why is that happening? Yeah, so, I mean, it's so large, but I think that, again, if we look, as I put my risk advisor hat on, we've got a $75,000 specific, a heart attack is avoidable. It is avoidable.
95% of what people die from
It is avoidable, right? So you gotta find that needle in the haystack. And like I said, I just don't know if we're gonna find it through biometrics. And I think where we've had the most success is engaging with the primary care. If you don't have a primary care doctor and you're an adult, that shouldn't be the case, right? But every, 40-year-old male, he, knows with a doctor, right?
Yeah.
So, but when you go, then you're having different conversations than we would have from a wellness perspective. But also, I think that, when we have employees here, there are wellness conversations that can happen. And when we start getting claims data, we can run it through and actually look where there's gaps in care. Because you get pharmacy, you get medical, and you get the claims, and you're looking at, CPT or diagnostic codes, and they can do an algorithm to kind of pull it out and say, boy, 3 people haven't had this, of the 9 things a diabetic should do, we're missing the top one. which is the diabetic retinopathy test.
I just think there's a lot of things that we can do for wellness, not necessarily medical, right? And we don't have to have this conversation anymore tonight, but I just
Yeah.
think that we can make part of this, right? We're self-funded, we can make it our own and pick maybe 5 things that, I don't know, whatever is out there for wellness, which the committee can
Yeah, I
talk
would
about
say,
that.
yeah, I think,
I mean, because honestly, and this is the God's truth, I looked at how much we spend a month, and I mean, that makes me sad. We have sick people in our
oh,
district,
we've had, I mean,
and they're not old, they're young.
we've
So
had some
anyway.
serious, I mean, we've had catastrophic claims, and again, that's what health insurance is there for. And then we have lifestyle claims too, but, you know, it's just some folks just, unfortunately have conditions that, you know, have, but I agree with you, I think there's gotta be a 2 or 3 prong approach. But as I think from a self-funded perspective, we have the latitude to take advantage of whatever we want. And data is king in our world, and if we can look at data, make some assessments and actionable items, and then monitor it, see if it's effective, all for it, and that's kind of what we have our plan is to do.
All right.
Any other questions?
For Tim?
All right,
Tim, thanks for being here again.
thank you very much for
Appreciate
having
it.
me, yeah, I'll be back, I'll give it to Maria.
Yeah, yep, I can send it to
Oh,
you.
you have a Maria, yeah, there you go.
All right, great.
Yeah,
Safe travels.
Yep,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Matt, appreciate it.
Have a good
Oh,
one.
absolutely.
Okay, we get to roll into a little more data from just taking a look at, this comes back to staff engagement, and this comes, I mean, we can talk into the strategic planning because that then lies into that KPI that we'll be talking about a little bit later, but this was something we just haven't gotten to and shared back to you what has been happening in terms of the staff engagement. We shared this data out back even in February, but we wanted to give you a little bit of understanding of where we're at and just a little bit about what we're using now to capture some of that staff engagement where people are. We find it really important. We got to, not only in like surveys like this, but also our rounding we do with our staff. And just so you know, rounding is all of our building administrators. They go to every single employee within their building and they ask for 5 different questions, getting qualitative data as well as this data that we come back to. And we figure out like how we might best help out or support with some of those things. When you see the monthly stoplight where it's like green, yellow, and red, those are things that are coming from staff members based on conversations that we're having, but also individually that's at each building, they're establishing then that same stoplight so that people can get a better understanding. And the whole purpose is to show, hey, this is transparent. We're not trying to hide anything. We're trying to figure out what our current state is and how we can best help people, okay? This is Panorama, and just so you know, it's a team of over 150 plus former educators, software developers, designers, researchers, facilitators, and education professionals based in Boston. This is a extremely national served service within surveys, and it's specific to education. So we were with Gallup, and Gallup has obviously hits other organizations beyond the educational arena. We like this a little bit, not only because it provides really good information for our staff and our engagement, but it also allows us to look at where our students are at and our communities too. But these are just a couple of the 600 plus districts across the country who are using Panorama right now, which I think is really important and vital for where we're at. Back in February, we had all of our staff take a Panorama survey. We had staff who were not educators, and we also had staff who were educators. And from that, we had 323 surveys completed. And the reason why there's 411 surveys total, that's not our whole staff population. You might have fallen into 2 or 3 different schools, okay? So I could be at FLC and I could also be at BAMS, and then have to fill out the survey for both. Plus I might have to fill out the survey for the district too as well. So there's multiple different ways that they could share their opinions and their perspectives depending on that. But out of that, we had a 78.6% completion rate, which is a really good starting point for us. Sometimes in other school districts, it's like at 60% or lower, people just not completing it. I think one of the things that made this successful is we did this during staff development and training so that it was just one more thing done, so they didn't have to do it outside of that. They could fill out the information. We also walked through the survey with everybody at that point in time and what some of those words meant so that they could get the best understanding and fill out to complete it so we could get the best information back. So we had several different pockets within the panorama setting. And the top pocket, the top box up there is all the staff. So this is facilities, this is administrative assistants, aides, those individuals rating in 3 different categories: school climate, school leadership, feedback, and coaching. 65% in a positive way voted strongly agreeing in that we're in that zone. And again, this is a reminder, this is current state, and this is the beautiful thing is we get to work on this too. The bottom, the only added to this is staff leadership relationships. And you see that 71% is shared there. In terms of school climate, a little bit lower than the staff climate from the staff point of view, 63%. School leadership at 57%, and then 42% as far as feedback and coaching.
Who's in the bottom group?
The bottom group is educators, all teachers, and counselors, psychs, those are all in those roles too as well. Okay. Continue on here. So when we looked at the top 3 box for us, meaning that the highly scored as a district, the 3 top boxes that we found is when the question came up, when challenges arise in your personal life, how understanding are your school leaders? A lot of the questions that we asked were based on school leadership because we wanted to see how can we better serve and support our staff. 87% responded favorably in saying strongly agree or agree to that. We had 4 different ranges. It was strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. We kept it for the neutral out of it because we didn't want that middle way. We wanted people to make a decision on this so we could get a better understanding of where people are at. Even though that kind of goes a little bit against the overall statistical data, we just wanted a cleaner understanding of where things are at. The second component here is how confident are you that your school leaders have the best interest in the school of mind? 79% of our staff said very confident within that frame. And then finally, how positive is the tone of that school leader set for the culture of the school? 72%. Okay, and that was existing current leadership 22-23. So this is not talking about anybody new within that frame as well.
This is from February.
This is from February too.
Do you have it broken down by building also?
I do have it broken down by building. I'm not giving you access to that tonight, but I can
That's
see
fine.
specifically on that. If you want more information personally to look at that, I can show you that, okay? But then you get a sense of like each leader at each building specific to how people ranked or rated those individuals, okay? These are the 3 opportunities that we really found that were in some of our lower boxes that we saw. At your school, how motivating do you find working with the leadership team? And we had 52%. Now, some interesting questions that come out of this. A couple of the other buildings after this, they had to present out their specific data to their staff. And they had to share the top 3 boxes within their specific data as well as the bottom. And what the opportunities and what they said, and many of them did, is like, okay, so if we're doing this well in those high opportunities, why are we doing this well? Because sometimes you can't see just within that question. Or if we're not doing what we're doing where we should be, what are some other things we can do? One of the big ones on here is how often do you receive feedback on your teaching? On the bottom here, 33%. Tell us what feedback means in your opinion. Is feedback coming to you on the weekly? Is feedback coming to you on the daily? Is, on that premise, what does good feedback look like for you? Is it a pat on the back saying, yes, you're doing a great job? Or is it that person who's getting into your world saying, hey, you might want to look at this, or you might want to look at this, or being a better coach in that? And it was really interesting hearing some of the data from those specific buildings and how they defined it. And everybody had a different definition of that. And so what we need to do is next time we run this is get a clear definition and clarity on what feedback is. Not to say that we're not needing work on feedback as a full building and for leadership, because feedback's a tricky thing in terms of like trying to get that appropriate back to those individuals to best coach them up, to give them the supports and tools that they need in the classroom. And that starts with a lot of walkthroughs and getting comfortable getting into those walkthroughs. And what we're trying to do as a district is getting our administrators in those classrooms much more. And I'll show you that and like things we're gonna try to do within the next few months here too as well. And then the middle one is, how knowledgeable are your school leaders about what is going on in teacher classroom? 46%. Okay, now this is district-wide, so this is every building culminating into those areas. One of the big things that we feel that is gonna make a difference in some of these areas, specific to those opportunities for growth, is providing scheduled, regular, ongoing training. Next year, and I don't have like an actual image of this, but we are mapped out on Tuesdays and Thursdays all the way through December already and already working into January. Our Tuesdays is, we're gonna be there an hour before school. Our Tuesdays are primarily like that training time where we can get together and focus specific on whatever area we're focusing on at that time. And then that Thursday is actually that collaborative team time where they're actually building upon that skill or using that skill within that area. This will make a drastic difference in providing that feedback and getting some of that back loop in it, as well as, you know, just teachers having a better administrators also having a better understanding of what's going on in those classrooms, having those conversations and facilitating and coaching up in those areas. The weekly collaborative team building, which are going to strengthen the talk between teachers too. So when people get feedback, we got great minds in that room. We've got a lot of really highly professional individuals who know what's going on, and the smartest people in the room are in the room. So trying to get people together so that they can work together and really build as a team versus separate islands. And then establishing that ongoing coaching. We have not done that in the past. That has not been a part of the premise. We start one thing and then we move on to the next thing and we say, okay, here we go. We're really taking committed focus on, as you're gonna see later in the strategic planning, in specific areas within that learning on the regular so that our staff can get the appropriate training that's needed. We also had opportunities, FLC partnered, or actually piloted, a family response, and they were looking specifically at barriers. And so you can kick this out to families. They kicked it out to all their families. 242 people responded, which is pretty awesome for a first go as well. These are just a couple of the questions. How big of a problem is the following issue for becoming involved with your child's current school or childcare needs? 83% responded favorably, not a problem at all, 148 people or people taking the survey. Small problem, 53, and you notice the large problem on the bottom, 15 of that, 66%. Second question here on the right, how big of a problem is the following issue becoming involved in your school, in your child's current school? The school does not communicate well with people from your culture. And again, this is back specifically to FLC, not a problem at all, 226 people, 94%, as well as a small problem. And then finally, how big of a problem is this in specifically your child's current school? Concerns about getting to school safely. 206 said yes, 21 small problem, 12 said medium problem, and 2 large problem. But this allows us to have a better dipstick of where things are at so that we can respond effectively in some of those specific areas to best help our families and support. It also shows our building principals as well as like, hey, we're communicating pretty effectively here. We're at 98% right now with 242% of our families, saying that things are getting out appropriately. To, hey, what kind of safety concerns are that? And we can actually see in that data too, they'll write out specific sentences like, hey, I feel like when we're coming into FLC, it's overcrowded. We can't get the drop off appropriately. How do we do that? That might be an example. Not saying that that's the catch-all, but that might be something that they could look at and make small tweaks to best help. Our goal then is to do this with all the buildings. And so then that they can respond, then our building leaders respond in a letter saying, hey, these are a few things we're gonna work on this year. We noticed this is how we can get better in a couple of different categories.
Was this sent out in multiple languages?
It was, yep, Spanish and in English at that time, so, yep. And then the final way that this is really gonna be, I think the most effective, Panorama has a lot of capabilities here, is really figuring out where our students are at. many times you can look at a student and you say, like, just the way they carry themselves or anything, you think everything's okay, everything's great and dandy, but deep between, behind that face or that, what they're portraying, sometimes you find out a lot more about the student. We can see right now all of our students, and if they take surveys of any facet, where they stand in some of this SEL work that we're getting to, the social emotional learning, and try to help and support individuals based on some of these things. This was another pilot run by FLC. We had the 5th grade students take this, 97 responses from the 5th grade groups. And these are just a couple of the different questions that we really brought forward here for you today. But how much do you feel like you belong at school? Okay, completely belong, 34 individuals, 35% of that group. But we had 5 kids who said, no, not at all. So who are those 5 kids? We can actually pinpoint who those 5 kids and actually ask those kind of further questions and say, like, hey, how are you doing? What can we do better? Or how can we create a stronger relationship, create that more adult access and that adult support as well. So there's a lot of things we can play with. How connected do you feel to the adults in your school? Again, you're seeing extremely connected at 16, quite connected 33, somewhat connected 23, slightly connected 19, and then 5 not at all. So we're seeing those same 5 come up. Why? And ask that question like, hey, you filled this out. Can you tell me more? Because I'm just curious because I want to help you. If you don't feel connected at all, what are we doing that we can best help you? And that's the beauty of it, with teachers then playing into this too and helping their students on that individual and meet that need. And then finally, how much support do the adults at your school give you? No support at all, had 0, which is awesome. A little bit of support. Okay, we had 5. If you see a tremendous amount and quite a bit, you're 70 kids, which is a pretty awesome thing with some support. So we get some better data here that we can work out of. So again, reframing staff engagement, we can see where they're at. We can see where our families are at, and then we can see where students are at. But it can't be just like the data. We have to do something with it, and we have to tell our staffs what that is. So our buildings went back and they said this. We also shared this with our staff at our May 12th meeting, saying, hey, this is the data we got. We got to do better in these areas. This is some of the things that we're going to do next year that are going to better help that. And we'll check in to see if any of that stuff is actually helping along the way through other surveys within that same facet. I think that's our last slide on this one.
So,
Questions you have about this? Yeah.
not so much the survey itself, but so when you're saying, you're gonna, what are we gonna do about it, and this is what we're gonna do, who, do you come up with that? Do the principals come up with, this is what we're doing? Is there a committee?
Yeah, so a couple different things. When we talk about the leadership, right? So I sat down with each of the building leaders after they got their data, and we walked through that together. And I had them work through that, saying, hey, what are some of those low points? What are some of the high points? How do you share this out to your staff? And then what are some things that you're doing right now that maybe you could work on a little bit more? Or what are some things that we have to start up that you could actually start implementing in the fall in the next few days? And then they had to articulate, here are some things we could start doing, or what we could, and again, it's them building upon what they have to best help or support. But before you can even do that, I'd even say, hey, what are we doing right within that frame? What does feedback mean to you? Define some of those things, because we don't know. We could implement a whole bunch of stuff. And then at the end of the day, because you thought feedback was one thing and you thought feedback this way, we're not really helping the cause. We're just trying to throw a dart again at the wall, and you can hit anywhere and hope that it sticks. So we've got to drill down further so that we can better help our support our staff, but also now when we look at it district wide, that's when we bring the whole team in and say, what can we do better? The great thing is when we start training up staff on how to work this through the students, it's the same kind of thing. They have to be trained up on how you walk through this, how can you execute this, and also help and assist those students who are in need of help. Families, the same thing when you share this back with staff, because, hey, they're saying, this is what they're saying right now. How can we best help them? Well, you get that input from that committee or those groups, and you should have a small committee of leadership people, AKA our strategic planning group, who can share in on this. So we'll share this with our strategic planning in terms of our family engagement and our student engagement, and see how we can best make sure we meet those needs. Okay. And again, this is our first go at this. I think there are even some questions that we're gonna tweak in terms of the staff engagement, so we can get better information back, so we can actually move and do something with it as well.
So are we planning again in February? Or what does that look like? What's the?
We're either gonna do February or we're gonna do like an October, February, so we have
Okay.
2 times of the year for staff.
Yeah.
So it's not just once. Family will only be once a year, but again, we just looked at one component, one facet, and Lauren and their team was just looking at barriers. They wanted to learn more about that. There are so many different like areas that you can walk into. We just have to determine which one do we really want to nail down and say, this is the one we really want to find more information about.
Yeah.
Because they have a plethora of different options and surveys that we can get data back on. We have to determine what is that most urgent need. And our AMHE team or our SEL team, they're also part of a lot of this conversation, determining what those questions are. How do we determine, once we get those, how are we gonna best help and serve those families and those students as well?
Or, a couple things, if you do it multi, is there enough time, you think, in 6 months to make an impact to change?
I hope with kind of the conversation we're getting into here right now, if we start talking 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, like, we should be able to have at least a little bit of traction to say, like, they should be seeing it, or at least seeing it and maybe touching it a little bit. Now, will we see like increments of great growth or achievement at that? I don't think so, but people should be able to identify, you did this, and we saw that stuff happening. So even if it dials up just a percentage point, I mean, that's a huge win in terms of that arena.
I think it comes to like telling that too, right?
Yeah.
Sharing those successes along the way.
Yes.
And then the other last question I had was, when you talked about changing questions, how are we gonna determine like a benchmark with that? If we, because, you know, a one word can increase 10%.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
is there a way that you're gonna have like a set group of questions that you can like, I'm just thinking how it bubbles up. I don't know what the end result looks like, but just a thought.
That's most definitely. I mean, I think we're gonna keep these for the staff engagement because it reflects back to leadership, and it's specific to leadership. The leaders will also be working on, there's a trust survey I'll share with you as well. So it gets a little bit more specific into reliability, credibility, care, authentic vulnerability, and willingness. And there's specific like pinpoints where their staff will also have a chance. So we're trying to get multifaceted so that staff have that. But then it's like, what we're coaching up on, like, what do you do now in the interim? How do you show people, hey, yeah, we're making those gains like you said.
Yeah.
But it's that constant communication, and we should be bringing that every meeting back to our leadership or our principal leadership meeting, saying, hey, how is that? How are we making any kind of impact, or what inroads are you making on that specific area?
Yeah, I would just challenge the district on, when we're looking at the questions, if we can not make a change, but instead can educate on what the question means. You're gonna probably have a better ability to tell your story.
Absolutely.
Right? If you show that growth, or if there's improvement needed.
Great point. Other questions, comments, clarifications on this work so far? It's the infant stages, and I'm excited about like how this moves forward, but it also lines into our next topic too, quite a bit within the strategic plan itself. Okay.
Does Panorama give you all of these things, or does somebody else have to go in and, I mean, one of our staff going in and getting all this information, or do they just say, this is what you got?
So Panorama gives you everything. So as soon as the individual takes the survey, it kicks out specific to every single question, what percentage. It even breaks it down to all those different degrees. And then specific, like, I think the students one is probably the most great one, because it's got a picture of each one of our students. And then next to it is that wherever they are within that SEL level that you're trying to assess. So, and it's instant. So as soon as you get that information, you turn it over to teachers. Teachers then have access to that within each one of their classrooms, like to say, hey, Vicky's like doing great in these areas. And Terry, well, we might have a little, like, how can we best help? Because I noticed this is not happening right now. And that's where that real-time engagement is going to be. Now, in terms of students surveys, it's going to be twice a year. I don't want to survey people to death either, though, too. And that's the worry that, you know, I think we had during the COVID world, where the multiple surveys and just keeping it at least bearable so it doesn't get turned off when we get people to participate. And the way we get people to participate is we actually show them we're doing something to make that happen too.
Well, I think in placing in your strategic plan is a great way to flow that out so that, you know, there isn't an over-surveying happening.
Yeah. So I'm gonna move on to strategic plan, if that's okay with everyone. Get this to go, perfect. I might even stand up for this because I've been sitting for a while. If anybody else wants to stand up, feel free to too, but I'm just gonna give you a hard copy too, because I think you might have it already in your packet, but it's always good to have another one. Feel free to stand. We'll do a little standing activity here in just a second here too. So, this is again, I'm gonna clarify draft. I'm super excited about this work and what we've been able to do so far, but draft in these areas. I think the last time we got together, we shared with you the core areas. And the core areas, just so everybody remembers, is learning and academics. So really about teaching and learning. The second one is financial and operational stewardship. So that's everything from the fiscal world to facility plans to technology plans. Engagement and communications is like, how are we engaging our staff, our students, our families, and our community? To the communications is like, how are we reaching out to make sure that they're getting that information as well on a timely basis? And then finally, safe and emotional healthy schools, which gets into Panorama as well, the student well-being survey, which blanked into there, as well as safety plans, student behavior, and staff wellness. All of these, under these core areas, everything that you read under each one of these areas, like report cards, student connectors, local assessments, those are all key performance indicators, all right? And it's all out of, obviously, 100% in each one of those buckets. The team of it, the leadership team, along with Ted Knightsky out of CISA 6, determined that these were the areas of focus and the percentages of focuses that we're really like honing into. Once you determine those areas of focus to those key performance indicators, we're going to be able to go back based upon what that's trying to indicate or what we're trying to accurately assess and make a rating for it. Are we meeting this expectation significantly all the way down to does not meet those areas? And again, this is about where are we at our current state? Let's just own what we have to the point where how do we get to that next level and what kind of things can we do to make that happen? When you look at just this is a lot. If you look at it, a lot. There's a lot of work, and even getting into the conversation about the how in these activities, we have to remember to stay laser-like too, and we're not going to be able to attack it all at once. And we're going to see incremental, small changes, but with a 3 to 5 year plan, or even quicker than that in that 30, 60, 90 that we'll talk about here in a little bit. What I want to go into next and kind of segue in as well. So John and Steve and I got a chance to talk a little bit just a couple days ago about how do we bring that high performance level, like Rick was talking about, where we're holding ourselves accountable as a board and really being high performance and going from that passive to that active world in our world. We talked a lot about with Ted, how to become facilitators within different ways that we can go into these groups to best help and support our school. So John, Steve, I don't know if we want to roll into this, but one of the ideas was like determining what are those 3 areas that we really want to focus on without going too much, and what are some areas that we really find like that are essential for us that we really want to dive deeper on. Now, we even thought about like even going to 4 to that with that understanding. But tonight is really about like, hey, how can we determine some of those with the understanding that we might not start that stuff right away, because I think we got to do a lot of like lead-in, support, training, letting our staff know to go and talk to our whole complete staff on day 1 at the August 21st meeting and say, hey, we're going to do all this stuff, could create a lot of like anxiety and misunderstanding of the process. This is about learning and growing together and to have multiple people into the learning and the process. And that's what I felt we had when we were talking with Ted in the first place. So one of the things, the action steps that I'd love to see tonight, and you all have on your folders, you have these wonderful colors, all right? These little stickets that you can do. And what I want to see is, I'm kind of curious to see the plots. If we plot things, if you get 3 of those stickies per each one of these core value buckets, where would you put those three? Now, you can put all three on one, like if bond rating is what you really wanna go all in and wanna like hear more about, and we wanna make that a potential task force, then place them there, okay? But you have that choice under each of those areas to go a little bit deeper. I can explain a little bit more, and I'll have Maria also explain in the financial area too about some of these topics, just so you get a better understanding of some of those areas before coming up and actually saying, this is an area that I wanna be part of. And I will also show you up here kind of like how that looks once we get into some of those things so that you can have a better understanding that way too. Let's just go for an example. I'm gonna show you student activity engagement under engagement and communications. So if we go back up to the screen here, and this is what we're working on. We submit all the information into a outline, and that outline then gets kicked out by C66, and then you see that nice little handout like right here that makes it look really presentable, and going through that as well. But when we look at one of those specific areas, and I'm gonna skip moderate here because I'm just going down to open enrollment. Okay. So for each one of those areas, you go and define every single one of those zones. So engagement and communication, this is the overall bucket. Engagement and communication, vision of the district is based on the belief that we are better together. We value the engagement of all stakeholders and will strive to maintain a positive, clear digital presence through the use of our website and social media. Okay, so that's just the general. I don't know if I can scroll up. The actual key performance indicator, student activity engagement, is the active participation in school recognized or school sponsored club activity or athletic team. The actual why this matters, students are connected to school and feel they get to participate in a school-based activity, tend to be more engaged in the school environment. High levels of engagement leads to better academic outcomes in math, reading, and all subjects combined. Reckmeyer, K-12 education researcher, just to quote the researcher so it's not just a statement. Then we see, how do you get the criteria out of this? We get in this conversation of more than 85% of students are involved in at least one club, activity, or athletic team.
And that's K through.
That's K-12. That's not just the high school level, and we should indicate that somewhere here too. But and then if you go to the bottom, 0 to 24% of students are involved in at least one club or activity. If you look on your sheet, this is where those 5 little Orioles come into play then too. Depending on where we're at right now, if we get that data, and let's just say we're at, I think last time I heard Jake, even at the high school level, was like in this kind of category, like that middle zone, if not below. We're either at that meets few expectations or meets expectations, maybe. And I'm just pulling that out of like what I remember. But at least this gives a criterion so that we can assess where we're currently at and what we might want to do to like bump that area up. All right. I just put in here celebrations are elementary primary to become a foundation for hitting these benchmarks. We believe that as improved student connectedness will increase the amount of trusted adults for students in the school community. Opportunities for improvement with the addition of the director's activities for each grade level. We are excited to watch the number of opportunities increase for students. Okay. So that's just one category, right? And you can look at all this. And again, this isn't going to happen overnight, but we start cutting this through as we're working through the work. If we go through these really, really quickly, but I'm not going to give you like that extensive of a description. Report card is the state report card. Honing in on that, greater and more in-depth of understanding. That's 40% if you notice on the key indicator of that area or that core value. Student connectors are all about reaching out to the community and having a better understanding of how do we get engaged in that college career readiness within our community, have players and partners that best help our students connect and have opportunities to actually look at different options for them post high school. The reading is specific to reading achievement, how our students are doing all the way across the board, K-12. Math, same thing, in terms of achievement and growth. Okay?
So,
Yep.
So the local assessments, I'm not sure how we do that, but I guess the report card just goes up, or does that covers high school too, right?
Correct. Goes all the way through.
So we don't want to include SATs in there anywhere?
Not yet. I think it's based on the state report card right now because it's the one indicator that we use as a state to say where you're performing. The local Rick, are gonna be like stuff like star testing or for, you know, some of those zones that can help us have a better understanding of what we're doing with small testings. But that could also get to, you know, what kind of assessments are you doing in the classroom every single day that are common? And we're not there yet, but that's one of those growth pieces that we could, I mean, growth in the classroom, but it will increase student achievement if we do that well. Okay? Ray, do you want to just walk through these quickly, bond rating, fund, and go through that?
Sure. Bond rating is something that is dictated by Moody's. It tells the financial strength of our district, and it also, based on our rating, and our rating has gone up in the last 2 years. But it helps with interest rate when we do go up to borrow. So we were able to secure a better bond rating or bond interest rate because of our rating. Fund balance is assets minus liabilities. Really, that's what's kind of left in our savings. And then the fund balance percent is that dollar amount divided by prior year expenditures. And that's important because that's kind of our rainy day fund. We try to keep that at a level so that we don't have to short-term borrow, which we haven't had to do. And it sits right around 5 million typically, but it does go up and down based on when we get our revenues in, our tax revenue and our equalized aid. Audit is, we have a lot of little audits during the year, but this audit really focuses on our annual audit that's done at the end of July. It looks at all of our work from July 1st to June 30th of every fiscal year. Again, that shows that we are doing things correctly, everything from the balance of our work, who's doing what, just the checks and balances to the financials. The facility plan, that's a long-range facility plan, and we'll focus on 5-year plan. And we're working with Dave on that to see what our anything in our facilities, indoor and out. And
Keeping them up, you know, in capital
Yep,
projects,
yep.
I mean, a really big part of that
yeah,
process.
deferred maintenance. The technology plan, we are working with Ivan on that. Making sure, and knowing how we're gonna afford all of the technology that we get every year, from Chromebooks to servers,
Clever touches.
Yep, when are we gonna have to get new, Clever Touches? Because that's something that we're gonna have to budget for, as well as some of the security features that we have as well to keep us, so that we're not hacked. There's a lot of companies being hacked right now, so to keep those plans in place. Mod rate is why am I blanking? Workers' comp, yep. So anything under 1 is very good. We're in like the 0.7 range right now, so we're doing really, really well with that. And safety is one of our number 1 priorities here. So we want to make sure that we have a safe workplace, both inside and out. Keep those injuries down. Injuries also translate, I mean, we want to keep our people safe and happy, but those injuries, when people aren't working, they're expensive. We're responsible for those hospital bills, doctor bills, so we want to make sure that we have safe facilities.
What is bond rating? What is that based on? Is it based on our fund balance? Is it based on?
It's based on all of those things. What our loan ratio is, what our fund balance is. Okay. You know, what turnover in the district. It takes into consideration a lot of things. Matt, were you in that? We actually had a bond rating call with Moody's.
Yes.
Before we actually borrowed. So, yeah.
And they ask you a ton of different questions.
They do everything, everything
Rick?
from the growth of the community to enrollment.
The one thing that I'm thinking about is, like, there's nothing in here about how we budget, really. I mean, it's like the fund balance is the result of how we budget, kind of. But I mean, there's nothing in here that the way I understand it, that says, are we doing a good job budgeting, and is our levy either stable or at least predictable? I mean, you could get a big fund balance, right, by just over levying, right? You could have lots of money in the bank to improve our bond rating by over levying. You know, there's nothing that, in my understanding, and I could be looking at it wrong, that tells me as a board, as a district, are we levying correctly, and are we keeping it fairly stable or at least predictable? You know, I don't see anything about the budget process itself, which I think is one of the key things.
Yeah, are you saying that's how you would measure it?
I
This
don't
has to be
know.
measurable. And the audit does go over the budget to actual. It compares that, but
Right, but,
yeah,
but you know what I mean, we feel like, you know, we have an opportunity with this increase to potentially over levy significantly and be under these new limits they're putting out. But you know, I don't think at least I wouldn't want to over levy, levy the right amount.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's a bigger frame, you know, Rick, you know, I think it gets into when you get into that zone and we have those conversations in here, these task forces get more pinpointed into those pieces so that we can have bigger conversations about those kind of things when we get to here. So when we're talking about, you know, if we're gonna do increases for our staff, we've already got information and understanding in these kind of zones and pockets that will best make, you know, decisions of what we have to do with in terms of as a board. And maybe does that make sense or?
I mean, as we're having those discussions, I don't see how a bond rating would affect that. I mean, the audit is saying we're doing the job correctly.
Correct.
Which I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
But it's not, there's nothing that tells me, and I might be interpreting it wrong, that we're actually budgeting correctly. I mean, not following the laws, but are we levying, is the ultimate levy the right levy, and are we continually going up and down, or are we stable, are we fairly predictable? Those are things that I think are important.
Larry, aren't those pretty much dictated to us though by the state, by revenue cap and
The cap is,
student?
right, so the cap's going up, like Maria said in the thing. I know there's other numbers to come out, but potentially $800,000 or something like that.
right, which
Well,
is
that would
going
be-
to affect our levy.
If you decide to do that whole amount,
Right,
it will
right,
affect the
that is a-
levy.
Right, over that. That's right.
We
I
are,
mean,
yeah,
Well,
we aren't even looking at over levying at all. I mean, we would,
no, well, I guess when I say over levying, I mean, there's over levying on purpose to save, right? That is, are we just not being fiscally responsible? So when that leads to us putting a higher levy out there than we need to. You know, I mean, just because we're allowed to go up $700
Mhm.
per student,
mhm,
are we gonna do that? Should we
Right.
do that? And
right,
But that's where I think this board is making and having those conversations versus these are more pockets of areas. And maybe I'm wrong in that, but I feel like when we have those conversations and dialogues, they're all happening in this room. We get to have that when she, you know, bringing the budget to you on the regular and saying, hey, where are we at? We're checking and balancing right in here, including on like when we're talking about increases, it's gonna be right in this room. It's not gonna be a separate task force, whereas these are more of those pinpointed components as I see it.
more, yeah, those are more general. We will definitely be having, I see what you're saying, I do. And that conversation on levy it's gonna take a lot of things into consideration, like increases.
Right.
Like, you know, like our fund balance, do we wanna build that up? Like Fund 46, do we wanna build that up?
Are you gonna have another operational referendum in 3 years from now, asking
Yeah,
the same
so-
question at a higher rate? Those are all those questions that we get, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so those are, there's going to be decisions that are going to lead to that budget decision,
Right.
or that levy decision.
Mhm.
But I see that more in
Yeah,
this room.
Yep.
You know, these, I mean, we can get into conversations, I mean, when we talk about, I hate to use like facility plan as that process, but when we're talking about capital funding, we have not had funding to come back to say, hey, we need to repair this or that, or, you know, just the way we've done some of our business. So how do we get that back in a plan? We're starting to save some of that money that we might be making from usage, you know, of our buildings that can go back into that. And that is creating that and providing that structure or that process in a team or a task force area so that people have an understanding what that is. So we can talk to anybody and say, yeah, we got a process for that. This is exactly what this is. This is how we do this. This is where we're gonna see, you know, potentially the over surplus that could go towards, you know, a fund that would then help out, you know, with roof repair if we needed it, or whatever it might be within our arena. So I think that gets into some of those more detailed conversations about what that is too, right? But I think, as Maria said though, when we do this, can we accurately assess it from what we're talking about, you know, in terms of the levy kind of conversation, right? I don't know if that's something that we can accurately assess either, versus some of these we can say, here's the criterion for this and here's the
right,
why.
that's very measurable.
I'm gonna keep moving for time here, just so that we get, and that's good questions, very good questions. Student activity engagement, we talked about just briefly. Parent community engagement, very similar. We're trying to survey and figure out where our families are at so that we can best support them in the long haul. Staff engagement, this is gonna come in the place of more of the rounding component where we're getting out to staff members, asking them a series of questions. Where are you at on that individual one-on-one so that we can provide them the best, in tandem a little bit with Panorama, but the Panorama lies more in that staff wellness to make sure that they're okay, and then wellness committees and other things that we can keep going on as well. Staff retention, basically the indicators of like how many people are leaving and going. Non-retired, that is not part of the status in that area, but it's just looking at like, what is our retention like, where are we at, and that's on a criterion too as well. Attendance in general, this is for students, where are they at, how does that look on the whole scale? What does that mean when we've got this X number out for that period of time, so it gets that. And then finally, student engagement, like where are they at? What are they engaged into the work in terms of, and this is where it crosses a little bit of the well-being here too and student behavior, but you know, getting that surveys out to our kids and understanding where they're at so that we can get some questions like, hey, do you have a trusted adult here? Do you feel like you belong at this school? Or if we're getting no, and we're not doing that, what can we do in those elements to better help and serve our students who are meeting our staff every single day? Safe, emotional, healthy schools. So student well-being, this comes back to the SEL work with the Panorama. Safety plan is getting into what does our crisis management plan look like for safety as a district in terms of like where are we at, how does that look, what do we do for trainings, all that. Student behavior. Getting into the zones of like where and what are our students doing on the regular and how does that look in increments, and have we been able to reduce this to then produce more through student engagement that knocks this down, or through better learning opportunities that no longer exist. And then finally, staff wellness. Getting into our last conversation tonight with Tim, and how do we proactively get into that point where people are like, yeah, it would be good to be able to go to the new weight room at Horace Mann and work out for a lunch period or after school or before school, offering some options like that for that specific area. So I guess what we would ask you to do with your sticks of paper is for each bucket, you have 3 votes, okay? And we're gonna just try to plot this right now to see where that lies in terms of your interests. And then what we'll do is then looking at those, determine like what are those potential, one from each bucket that we can focus on in terms of like task force. Now, in one area, each one of you might say like, hey, I really want to be in this core, or I want to be in this core, I want to be in this course and be that task force facilitator, but we're not there yet. This is more of just getting a general understanding of like, where are those real strong points of interest that you might want to be more involved in.
Can I ask if we have to put them 1 in or 3 in each one? I mean, if we're putting priorities in place.
I guess,
I think we just.
put all 12 wherever you wanna put
Whatever
them.
you want. I think
Okay.
that's a great call, Rick.
Yeah.
And, this is a great part, we had great conversation with Ted and also previous board meetings about influencing and aligning our strategy as a board with the strategic plan. This is a great start to it. It's not all encompassing, never gonna be, right? But I think it's a great start to it. And yeah, I would say place your stickers wherever.
And tonight, what I think we'll do is just get to the plot, all right? And then next time we'll come back to it and like dive a little bit deeper into this. So what does that mean? If the strongest one on here is like reading, okay, so what does that mean? How do we take that next step? What's the next action step in terms of, are we gonna, how do we start a task force, those kind of things? What does a task force even look like? How do we prepare staff for anything like that? How do we get the right players in the boat? All those kind of questions that we have to talk through. Steve, John, am I missing anything? Are we in alignment of what we were talking about?
Does anyone else that was a great call out. Any other questions by anyone on the board?
All right, the board's yours. Go ahead. I can put some Jeopardy music on if you like that. You know, like
Soft background music.
Yeah.
It's covered between 2 and 5 people.
All right.
And I'm one of them.
Okay.
That's the second one.
That's awesome.
So 0 to 3 would be the.
I love it. There's no wrong answer. It's a beautiful thing.
That's where decisions are made.
I know, it's hard.
Consensus?
Yeah, it's all consensus grants. Was that? Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, it's Monday, I forgot.
As soon as she said it, I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah. So if everyone just wants to take a look, and we're not gonna really spend a lot of time of like discussing what it's at right now, but just like look at the plot and see what you're seeing. Which is, there's some pretty cool, just first blush looking at this. I mean, it makes me excited too, just in terms of some of the stuff that's up there right now as well. And what I'll do then is, obviously, we'll take pictures of this and keep these here, and then return to this either, obviously in July, so we can have a further conversation of like, what are some next things? Maybe John and Steve, we can get together too, and just talk a little bit more about like process in terms of, best formulating. We got some ideas, but really taking it slow. The one thing I do want to mention though is August 21st. You can put this on your calendar if it can work for you. From 8 till 10 in the morning is our first kickoff for our staff. It would be awesome if you can even be there in the beginning of that from 8 till like 9 or even a little bit less than that, where we can introduce the board and just, I think it's really value add of like showing everybody your faces there. What's that?
Is that a Monday?
I think it's a Monday. Yeah.
We're out of town.
Okay. All right. But it's okay. I guess I just want to get it far enough advanced so that we can do that. John, I don't know if you want to talk any more
Yeah, and we
about
can
that too.
think of other ways creatively to share who you are with the group, right? Like, there's something we need to do there, and I think it's just important if, you know, as we build towards task force or whatever those action items are, activation, that, you know, everyone that's going to be participating in that, you know, knows all of us, right? And really can get to know us a little bit before doing that. So yeah, if you can make it, that'd be great. I mean, I think it's value added.
Being able to schedule flexibly, I've been to most of them, probably all of them, but it's really a fun event too, because the staff's, you know, excited about being back. They haven't seen each other, something in a lot of cases for a few months, and it's just kind of a different air and going on in the room that morning, so.
And we have breakfast beforehand with everybody, so please come in and have breakfast with everybody too, and then including not only introduction, we'll talk about like the year quickly, and then Lucas Jaden will be there from 9 to 10:32 speaking on the work that we're doing at that arena too.
And if you have any thoughts on activation or any thoughts on what next steps look like, you know, share. I think it's important that, you know, as we build that, our voices are all heard, right? So I think it's gonna be important we understand the pace we wanna go at as a group and, you know, what focus items that come out of this.
All right. All of what you see right here, all this wonderful work and the strategic planning, you've got to have a foundation though too, of like what is culture. And we were fortunate just a couple days ago as a strategic planning team to really sit down and start building a cultural playbook. And I'll explain exactly what that is in just a second here. So I'm just gonna get this up on the screen. I'm gonna go next one. So this was our overlay for that belief, we call it the belief creation during this time. And it was, again, our strategic planning team, who's made up of teachers from every single one of our schools. And we have administrators and different players, psychs, social workers, you know, individuals who can help out and benefit what we're doing. So the main purpose of the whole event was we will create a cultural playbook that creates common language with clarity of our beliefs, behaviors, and experiences so that we can organize our human energy. And human energy is really about how do we sustain, you know, and help us be more effective, less frustrated, and have a clear understanding of our work for all of our staff. And this gets back to staff engagement. So this works right in with that and ties right within our world, as well as student engagement, family engagement. On May 12th, we did a 6-minute mission statement or a purpose statement like we generated here and with Ted at one point in time with over 200 staff members. This is what we came up with as our purpose statement. It says, we will dedicate our work to serve, inspire, and champion all NFDL students through love, laughter, and empathy in a culture that creates intentional experiences for others, students, staff, families, community, so that together we will grow through meaningful relationships and reach high levels of achievement as we passionately learn to become the best versions of ourselves. Okay. What we did throughout this whole meeting, we talked about understanding what culture is, and I'm giving you a brief overview of all this stuff because of time right now, but awareness of ERO, and then generated the beliefs, and then created look forwards for where we're going to move forward as a full school. This is just a picture of May 12th, Lucas Jaden speaking. This is how we created this purpose statement, that slide, and the dry erase board were all the words that we had. So culture, the definition, I feel like I was up with you here about a year ago today, and I was talking about the same stuff, which is super awesome and excited at the same time. So leaders create the culture, and leaders create that through creating the beliefs, and then the beliefs drive the behavior, and then the behavior produces the results. And then it's really kind of cool because you could do this in reverse, saying like results generated from the behavior, the experiences that we create for other people, which then are based upon the beliefs of what we are as a whole school. And that is driven by the influence of the leaders in the first place. Many organizations, this is kind of what it looks like. We're trying to all get to this one area, but we got a whole bunch of different like stories, different arrows, and they're all different lengths, sizes, whatever. And we're all trying to do things in our own different, unique way in those silos. And this is what I felt like when coming in to North Fond du Lac. And I feel like, how can we get to that next level where we've got a whole bunch of different stories, but we're all aligning in that same frame and having a commitment to our purpose and our cultural and our strategy, so that we can really move us forward together and embrace that uniqueness of who we are as NFDL. So, and this is really just a quick shot of like current state. We didn't have like, you know, some of those components of like, what are our beliefs? What are those behaviors? How are those experiences happening? And so that started right back in May 12th, 6-minute purpose statement. We then on last week on Tuesday, I believe, we had the cultural playbook creation. And then next year, continue rollout per the monthly. This is all for year one. And then working on student implementation and design for the following year, the 24-25 school year. This is all helped out with Jaden and Jones and other things with building. So there is already kind of a plan in place. This is year 2, getting more staff or continuous training, parent and family clarity, training of student leaders, and then implementing university for all students so they have some of these in their toolboxes before they graduate. Again, assisted by Jaden Jones. So this is what a cultural playbook looks like, and you'll see these things often, and you've got a sheet of paper right in front of you. It's like what we believe, so those are our beliefs, our personal responsibilities, how we behave, the strategies, and then the experiences we achieve through strategy and through those behaviors. And it's really mapping out what does that look like. So what we started out with is the second question we asked, and this is something we talked about in here too, is like, how do we make this happen? How do we make that purpose statement we were talking about before happen? And what are those behaviors that it looks like? And this is from the strategic planning that we did. These are the behaviors: collaboration, trust, listen, vulnerable, support, reflect. And if you notice, very similar here: collaborate, trust, cooperate, innovate, believe. And this is all the ones that we got from the whole district here on this side too. So just showing the similarities between each one of those. Here's the actual words that came up for the whole staff: trust, engage, reevaluate, empathy, listen. I'm not going to read through all of them. Accountability, understanding, support, uncomfortable, compromise, dedication, acceptance, vision. We took all those then in this session, and we started thinking about like, where do those things fit? And when you look at beliefs, we wanted 3 different beliefs under a template of understanding. This is all comes from the Focus 3 work. Tim Kite, Brian Kite out of the Ohio area. And they have a template of what is that one individual responsibility, that belief? What is one that really talks about that team or collaboration? And then what is one that deals with like mindset? And so then we took individual responsibility. We took all those words from that last page, put them in the individual responsibility. We put all the words that we felt fit under that team. And then we put all the words that we felt under mindset or growth mindset under another pocket. And then from that, it allowed us to see kind of like, how does that commonality relate back to the actual creation of the beliefs? Then what we did, we counted off by 3s in the room. We had over 17, 18 people. And we started to create the belief statement. And the criteria was it had to be clear, simple, and actionable in its words, so that anybody could pick it up and like, okay, I can somewhat understand this to a degree. The other clarification is that one of the beliefs had to be an individual responsibility. The other had to be a team, and then the growth mindset as well within that. And what we wanted to do within our small little pockets when we were creating beliefs, they had to iterate or create 3 different possible beliefs within that sector that hit that, but align back to, I think I can go back, to the words that we encountered as a full staff. All right. So then what we got out of that is 3 different beliefs. Just fast forwarding: stand up and own it was the individual responsibility. We are one is the team. And then the 3rd is courage to grow, which was the mindset component. And each one of these has a definition. And then under the definition, there's 3 behaviors already generated. And then all those behaviors then have definitions or operational understanding of what each one of those look like. So a lot of work done in a 4-hour span, and it really moved really well to a point where in front of you right now, you've got a quick draft of some of that wording. The other side of this too, you get just a general sense of like what culture is, why is it important, own your 20 square feet. And 20 square feet, the easiest way to remember this is that we were all given the opportunity by North Fond du Lac to come in and do what we could best do for it and serve and support. But we were given that permission and that ability to make that happen. And we're gifted that. And so how are you going to make that happen within your beliefs and your behavior and the experiences that you create? What we also have, and we're in the works of right now, and this is still working through, like you saw on that screen, there's a definition of what Stanona means. There's a definition of what we are one, and there's a definition of courage to grow. Then there's individual definitions for all these behaviors. And the one on the right here is just really cool. And this is where the action becomes more than words. And this is the biggest thing about all this. This is not a bunch of words. We're not just saying stuff. We're actually going to own it and live it. And that comes into how do you, as an intentional contributor, in your modeling, in your actions, what does that look like when you stand up and own it? As an intentional contributor, what does that sound like in the words that you're using when you're standing up and owning it? And the same thing goes in for each one of those beliefs. If we're talking about we are one or that team area, what does that look like as a team in modeling? What does that look like when we say things in that model? This is work we still have to do in these two pockets, but one group went ahead and is already starting to do some of that work, which is really cool. And then finally, courage to grow. What does that mean when I'm a contributor? What does that modeling look like versus saying, hey, and this comes back to the overall premise, which you've heard before from Ted, and maybe not, I don't know, maybe I'll just keep bringing it back up because it's good stuff. ERO, the umbrella, this is a mindset and skill set that encompasses all of that over the top. It's an umbrella. What the mindset and skill set is event plus response equals your outcome. All right. The mindset is this. There are thousands of events that you encounter every single day in your work and wherever you're at. You can't control those things. Your response, you can control. It's how you're going to reflect and what you're going to say and how you're going to act, what you're going to say. All those things come into place. Outcome, you can't control it either, but you can influence it based upon what your R is going to be. Okay. So when you think about this, and then the other thing I love about that little component, every single R, every single response that you make is another person's event. So it circles back to you're creating experiences for another person. And then this gets into the training of Jaden and Jones, because that R factor, or what some examples of how you can do better in skill set. So that's your mindset of ERO, but the skill set, what the R could look like. Lucas talks about 4 different things. He talks about pressing pause before you get in a situation where you just jump into it. And now the best example I can give to you is you're driving. Everybody drives in here. You're driving and the person in front of you all of a sudden like completely slows down. All right. Immediately you might have different thoughts, right? There's a lot of different responses that you could bring to the table. And that could be everything from a gesture to yelling or honking the horn, whatever it might be. And that would be, when we do that and we make that response, it's a default, or basically we are choosing something below the line, as Ted indicates a lot. And that's our default animalistic fear, fight, flight kind of components. The thing that we want to work on is how do we get to that intentional practice or that purposeful level where we can actually make the best next choice. So pressing pause is one of those R factors that Lucas talks about. Take a breath. The second one he talks about is controlling the controllables. Okay, so what can we actually control? Well, we can't control the events. We can't control the outcome. We can't control our response. Get curious before furious. So before we lose ourselves, ask the right questions. And then the final one, make the next best action. Okay, so if we train and we work as adults, and as students, as a community, we have created like awesome experiences that encompass that and give our kids tools as well as our adults ways that we can be best successful from day to day. Getting back to that whole idea, we can be our best version of our best self. This was just a little quick next action step. So we're already talking about what we need to do next, which is awesome and great. And I think that was about it for the time. So I just wanted to brief you, like we're still in draft phases, but there's a lot of work that's been put into play. And this will be that like ultimate thing over the top of, our strategic plan as well. So super excited about it.
Vicki, I think you had a question first. Did you want
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna comment. I like that, it's down on the bottom, embrace productive
Yeah.
discomfort.
Yeah.
Because growth is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
it's painful, but I like that, the productive, that's good. I like
Yeah, it's that sense of like, hey, we're gonna experience a lot of change,
that.
and how are you gonna carry yourself when that comes? Are you gonna be in the room, like, just like we were talking about with that vehicle, when it stops? Are you gonna go, oh my gosh, here we go again, another PD? Or are you gonna say like, hey, how might I learn a little bit of something from this and figure out like how I can be better spell? Same with students coming in the classroom. Yeah, I really wanna be on my phone all day. Like, I wanna be on my phone, but hey, if I put my phone and actually am present for that moment, I might actually obtain something that I never thought I would before, and I might create a relationship that I never had before. So it's getting our brains and actually mentally training ourselves so that we can really execute as best as we can within our workplace and our
You
community.
tied it on the end a little bit. Would you say for a strategic plan, and this kind of enables the strategic?
Correct.
plan, Right? Like
Correct. You have
it's
to
the
have,
mindset, it's the.
Right.
Yeah.
because you can have all those things that you're working on here, and if you don't have some of these things where people are at, then it can be a real tough road to try to even accomplish that. So this, again, about a year ago, I was talking the same thing to y'all in this very room and sharing the same thing. So it's super exciting actually getting into some of that flow and movement. And I really appreciate everything you guys all have done to make this happen. But we've had some great work, as Rick pointed out in the beginning of this full year. It's been absolutely excellent. So that's just a little preview. A lot more to come. A lot more work is ahead of us, which is also equally as exciting. But really appreciate you listening to some of that information today. I'm going to turn over to Maria, who's been patiently waiting. The budget update, if you can share with us, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. I'll just give you a kind of a high level of information that we know right now. And I did outline some of those high level points that are affecting our budget. And this happened about 2 weeks ago. The legislature approved a bill, and things that affected funding, school funding, were the revenue limit per pupil adjustment, which if you're over $11,000 per pupil, the proposal is $325 in addition to what they're already getting per year for those 2 years of the biennial budget. We are currently below 11,000. We're at about 10,003, between 10,003 and 10,004. So the other proposal is a change in the low revenue ceiling. So that would bring us up to 11,000 per pupil. And that would result in about a $700,000 revenue increase over what we're currently getting. Per pupil aid was not increased at all. That's a zero increase, so we will still be receiving $742 per pupil. Special ed categorical aid, right now we're getting about 30.5% to 31% of aidable special ed expenditures, and that's going to 33.3%, which would result in about $106,000. I was just talking with Matt today, while we're getting this, I just found out on Friday that we had our supplemental special ed aid taken away. So we're actually gonna decrease by $78,000. So we're not netting a whole lot in the special ed arena. So there was that. There's been discussion about charter schools. Charter schools are actually getting a very large increase. And that does affect our mill rate if we choose to levy for that. So, an additional $1,100 per pupil through the choice program, $1,700 per pupil for charter schools, and $2,948 per pupil in the high schools. So they're getting a very substantial.
And that's also private schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Along with this, and this is great news for districts, especially low spending districts like us, it is offering a lot of new revenue for us. But what I'm waiting for now is the equalization aid. We're going to get an estimate on July 1st. We get an estimate every July 1st, and it's based on the 22-23 budget. So that's why I do that budget revision in May, is to get as close to actual as possible so that we get a good estimate on July 1st. So that will come out hopefully at the end of this week. And then I'll be able to put those pieces together to see how these increases that we're getting in revenue are going to affect the mill rate. So along with these opportunities, these great opportunities, we're gonna have some decisions to make on how much we want to increase the mill rate. We already have part of an increase built in because of the referendum. But now this would affect Fund 10, that mill rate, because we have 4 different mill rates actually baked into one.
But having any conversation about this now without the equalization aid and understanding, it's tough to really pinpoint anything at this point, correct? Is that fair, or?
It is, yeah. I'm just letting you know what the legislature has proposed. The budget should be, according to one of the legislators that I talked to last week, Friday, was it?
Yeah.
They're hoping to have the budget complete by the middle of July. So nothing is a done deal quite yet until the governor passes it or vetoes it. So these are the opportunities that we have. There's obviously a lot of other things in the budget, but these are the high hitting ones and the ones that will really affect us. Any questions on
Do I
that?
understand it right? I mean, this is all money. It's not like the state's giving us money, except for the special ed, which they've taken part of it away. What they've allowed us to do is raise our levy, right?
Well, yeah, yes, that pie is getting bigger. So we have the opportunity to increase our revenue, but along with that, yes, if it isn't supported by equalization aid at the same time, then the levy will increase. So that equalization aid number is really important to see where we will land. And, you know, I'll give you a couple scenarios. If we levy to the maximum amount that we can, this is what it will do. If we want to be stable and, go with what we had talked about during referendum talks, this is what it will be. But then we have some decisions to make. We will have less revenue to play with and to invest. So, there will definitely be some more discussions and some decisions to make.
And then Rick, it gets back into like, do you do this or do you do like an operational, at some point, because trying to make that, over the 2 years. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what would happen, but that's a possibility too in that factor.
Yeah, and so like the facility plan, the technology plan, those things, the 5-year, the 3-year plan, we need to consider that as well, because any surplus right now, if we can stick it into Fund 46, and Steve, you might remember, and Vicki, you might remember, we set that up 7-8 years ago. So if we have a surplus, we can either put it in Fund 10, which is our general revenue, but we don't get aided on that. We don't get equalization aid on that. But if we put it in Fund 46, where we know we're going to use it for facilities in the future, we'll get additional equalization aid on that. So there's some strategy along with this as well. And if we know what our 5-year plan is and our technology, our facility plan and our technology plan, we can plan for that future. That's just the smart thing to do. We do that as homeowners and business owners. We need to do that as a district as well, and project out.
That's what we've been talking, my mind's been kind of spinning. And I think what I was trying to get at is, we're talking about a facility plan for 5 years or 3-year technology for 3 or 5. It'd be nice to see a financial plan for 5 years that took those 2 things as inputs. And then there's, whatever the number is, 5 to 10 variables that you'd have to estimate, what your percent raises you're gonna get, what insurance is gonna go up. I mean, you know better than I do what the 5 or 10 variables are, but to have a 5-year plan that said, if we want to do this for facilities, you're asking for this based on our 5-year plan, it's not gonna be that, it's gonna be this, or, so I think there should be a financial plan that kind of estimates what the mill rate is and what the levy is based on the 5 or 10 variables that change, that dramatically impact you. Insurance and inflation and.
Well, I think that's where the budget comes into play. I mean, just what Maria does, right?
But we just see the budget for the 1 year is my point.
Well, now I'll be able to create it for 2 years. I would love to be able to do that, to project out for 5 years. But every 2 years, you've got that biennial budget, and this would have blown any budget out of the water.
Right, right, you have to put assumptions in it, right, the part of
Yes.
it to get out,
Big
the shape of your assumptions are.
Yeah,
But just in looking through stuff, I've seen, examples of districts that have published their 5-year financial plan, and they list what their assumptions are.
mhm,
And obviously, you can't hold somebody for what the budget is 3 years from now, but you can say, well, here's what our assumptions were, here's what it turned out to be. So now we can adjust the next plan according to what actually happened, but it makes me nervous because, like you're saying, we don't have a whole lot of time to decide if we have to do another operational
Right.
referendum.
Right.
And,
And I would say that's a majority of our state. I'll be really honest. Like if you talk to most people from every district to district, they'll be sitting there the same thing. We just don't know, even though they want to be calculated, like we were talking about here. I think we can do our best to have those kind of assumptions in play. But I don't know. I mean, just going through this for the first time too, and just understanding it and trying to get the best information, the more we talk about and have conversations, it's gonna be good. But I think having some of those components is gonna be helpful. But at the end of the day, we gotta do our best with, again, the state is we don't know what the state will do. And that's the hardest part about this. It's not like we can, because we didn't even know what this was gonna be until like a week ago. And yet I probably had like over 16 different scenarios since the beginning of this year saying, okay, this is what this could be, or this is how this is gonna be, and this is what we should have, But again, we were on a Tuesday, it was one thing, on Thursday it was another. So, and then before I even got to that point, we were like, oh, okay, this is what it is right now, but.
yeah, and I'm happy to do that if there's value in it. And I would love to see how these districts that are doing the 5, how close are they
Yeah.
coming?
Right.
And enrollment is another factor here, especially with us having so much open enrollment. And now we have a new subdivision going in. How's that gonna affect it? It's just, there are just so many variables that land on those
let me
big.
see, I can't remember there was a couple of districts that I looked at that published them on their site.
Yeah.
And so I could actually go back and see how good they
Yeah.
were.
That'd be awesome.
I would,
So I'll do some research.
Yeah.
on that.
yeah.
Cool.
We have a question, because it gets confusing. So the $325 per pupil is just an increase in the revenue cap. And that's different than in other years where, say, example, first year we got $200 per
Right.
pupil in aid, actual dollars.
Per pupil.
Categorical aid,
Yeah.
yes. So the revenue
Okay.
limit might have stayed at 0, but that categorical aid, the danger in the categorical aid is that can be taken away at any time, which we've seen happen before. The revenue limit, that's gonna constantly build on our base. So
Okay.
that won't go away. And the 325, that's for anybody that is over 11,000 right now. So they might be at 11,001, they're gonna get 11,425.
Okay.
And then in the second year of the biennial budget, we'll be at that 11,000, so then we will get 11,325 in the second year. So I'm starting to get those pieces, like like you're saying, Rick, I'm starting to get those pieces where I can build the 2-year with enrollment assumptions and with salary increase assumptions, with health insurance assumptions.
Inflation.
Yeah, so,
Because even the special ed funding going from 31 to 33, the way I understood it is that 33 isn't really 33%. They've allocated an amount, a fixed amount that equals the 33%. But if more districts submit to it, then that percentage will come down because it's not an automatic 33%. It's, they set aside a pool of money.
For high cost,
Mhm.
yep, for
Right.
high cost special ed, yep.
And so if that gets used, it gets used whether you're at 33% or not.
Mhm. Well, the 33%, that is our aidable amount, but the high cost is what we don't know. That's that pool of money, and we don't know until everybody has submitted their high cost. So in that category, we got about 181,000 this year. But we don't know until everybody is done submitting. I just got that number like last week.
So definitely more conversation to happen, especially once that equalization aid comes in, because that's really, again, depending on whatever that is, it's really gonna dictate what kind of decisions we can make at that point in time. Fair?
Right, including salary increases.
Yeah.
So we'll have to,
Insurance, all, I mean, you
Yeah.
can throw all those factors into the.
Right, and with
The
any
next.
budget, I mean, you can look over the last 5 to 10 years and whatever the percentage is, you can increase or decrease it by that, but doing a 5-year, is it worth the time to do that if it's gonna be so far off?
that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, and
I mean, I get it.
I'm
I'm
still
all for the
curious to
budget.
see that, like how they did that, because that's, yeah,
They had a list of.
make some variables.
5 to 8 variables.
Yeah.
That they said affected the number the most and then estimated, and put the logic on why they did that.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of that. I think I brought it at the last meeting, you know, if we had a $200 increase, if we had a $100 increase, well, it wasn't even, so I did those scenarios for you, but it wasn't even close, because we're at, you know, first of all, they didn't go categorical aid, they went revenue limit to 11,000. So, yeah, and I can definitely, make assumptions on salary increases, on health insurance, because I kind of have a sense of the trend. But when it comes to the revenue, the state revenue, it's just, it's difficult. And I've been doing this a while. It's just, right now, it's just so wacky. But I am very open if you want to send me those.
Yeah, let me see if I can find them again. It's been a while since I looked at them.
Sure. I'm always happy to learn, and I'm always happy to look at different ways of doing this.
We got a lot of new stuff coming in July too, just so everybody's aware. Everything from educator guide to, follow up with the information here. There's a lot just to get through too as well. So just be ready, because I mean, this is the busiest time of the year for our worlds, which is great and allows us to get, and we're super excited, but there's some really good things we get to walk through together. So just be ready for that in July. And I guess we go to, we're done with the superintendent's report.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask, on the employment guides, we had some informal discussion about the sunset on the retirement benefit, and
Right.
I think I can speak a little more freely now, because it won't affect me, but about the sunset part, what the pros and cons of that, there's reasons to have it, but there's also reasons not to have that.
Right.
And so just so that there's some looking at that.
Basically, so everyone knows here with the educator guide right now, everything is going to remain the same for the most part from last year, other than clarity of like certain things that are just not defined yet. So when we talk about the sunset, so then we can talk about a little bit deeper of like, that will stay there for the time being. But until we have a conversation, till other staff members can have that conversation, we're not changing anything from that document other than just providing more clarity for people to understand that. And that's one of the things we said to all of our staff when we kicked out the contract too, because we just want them to have that, the same sense of what's going on. And I know that we still need to make that decision. Right now it's in there. And that sunset clause or what, 2025, I think.
Yeah, which is creeping closer each year.
Right.
And then just for
Yeah, so everybody
I think
knows.
I mentioned before, but I'm aware of talk about teachers who are concerned that they should retire so they don't lose that very nice benefit. But the intention has always been, and what we've done several times, I believe, is we keep moving the date forward because we're not looking at actually taking it away.
Right.
At least we haven't been so far. So, and my concern is I hate to see somebody retire before they really want to or before they're ready, just so they can get that retirement benefit because they think it's gonna expire. So, and we can't predict or we can't tell them we're gonna move it forward, but that's been what we've done. But
Right, it just comes back to the same conversation we were just having a few minutes ago. We can't predict what some of those things become, and the fact that it's in there is still like that.
Right.
It's forcing in that one way, but also if it wasn't in there, then we'd have more life say, hey, yeah, we're gonna keep doing the same practices until we tell you that we can't based on what we have, to make that decision of what we were able to do within the monies that we have been given. So, but then again, that's, prioritizing and what is that importance, and that's something we're not saying we're getting rid of, and that's why it's like, hey, let's keep that in there for now. But if further conversation to say like, if we remove it, it just is the fact that it's still there, and then without a date on it, I think that's the biggest worry too.
And some clarity on that will help, I think. And then there was the other situation when you came in that and I won't get into any specifics, but I think that language needed to kind of be cleared up about when you leave, that could get contentious, and we can talk more on the side on that one, but it was that employee issue that crossed over from the prior superintendent to.
Oh, yeah,
your
yes,
term.
yep,
So.
yep.
So that doesn't happen again, I guess is the point, so.
Right.
All right.
I know, okay, thanks, Steve. It just took me a second, I registered. Good. 9:35, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. All right.
He's looking old meeting.
Any other questions? All right. All right, we'll move on to new business. So our first item on new business is discuss and consider maintenance equipment loan. Do you want to go through that, or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, so there's a loan from National Exchange Bank and Trust for garden tractor. It's a $30,000 loan, 4 years at 4.9%. So, any questions before, or you can open it up for a vote?
I guess I have a question about what it is.
So,
Dave.
Why do we need it?
It's a mid-sized tractor, so it's been something that I've been looking at for a couple of years. I had a price on one last year in June. We decided not to do it because we still were in a lease on our skid steer. We paid the skid steer off now, and we actually own that. And what's gonna help us is we have so much perimeter sidewalks now, it's really hard in snow to keep up. We just a skid steer, we do have that other snow blower, but, it just doesn't do what we need to do. With COVID, we're going to a lot more entrances, and if we have a midday snow, which we've had a lot of them this year, or this past year, to keep everybody safe and getting them out or in, it would help us out in our snow removal. To buy it without the lawnmower is almost not the smart idea. And it also comes with a loader bucket, so it's more of a versatile thing, but the real purpose is for the snow blower.
Okay, and so it's an addition to what?
It's an additional piece, yes. And this one is actually used, it's got about 40 hours on it, but it's the same exact tractor we priced out last year. And the whole purpose, the guy who bought it, bought a next size bigger. We just decided he wanted something bigger. He's not using it for snow blower. We have to add that part on. He was using it for a loader bucket.
And 30,000 is the one, then, pretty good size.
Yeah, it's coming with a heated cab, the tractor, heated cab, loader bucket, mower deck, and the snow blower. We'll also be able to, in the future, if they want to add a broom to it, we could do that. Any implement, it's got a 3-point hitch on the back, so it's lower tilt or anything like that. And the The $30,000 one is actually, we're gonna be more like 27,000, so.
Sure, okay.
And there's a very good chance that we'll just pay this out of budget because, right now we're looking like we're gonna have a decent surplus. So this just gives me the option to be able to do a loan if something comes in, you know, that's, you know, we're still getting invoices and, but there, like I said, there's a very good chance that we'll just pay this out of budget
Okay, thank
rather
you.
than paying the interest on it.
Any other questions? All right, then we'll call for a motion.
So moved.
A second. Mappy,
Yes.
Goldowski, yes, Jaeger,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Hack.
Yes,
All right, our next item is discuss and consider school fees for the 23-24 school year. Happy to report no change to school or class fees for the 23-24 school year. And they were included in our packet as well. So if you had questions before we go to a vote. All right. Question?
no, I'm good.
Okay. Then I'll look for a motion to pass the 2023-2024 school and class fees.
So moved. Second.
Jaeger,
Yes.
Mappy,
Yes.
Hack,
Yes,
Goldowski, yes, Geckerman.
Yes. All right, our next item is discuss and consider lunch and breakfast fees for 2023-2024 school year. And once again, no change to the breakfast and lunch prices for the upcoming school year, 23-24. And once again, that is in our packets, and there, like I said, no change to costs. Pause again if there's any questions the board wants to ask.
have we caught up to that problem that we had where we were forced to, if I understand it right, to raise like 10 cents or something or for a while there?
Yeah, we're actually under a waiver. If you have a positive fund balance, you don't have to raise prices, so.
Okay.
So we've been under that for quite a few years now.
That's it. All right, I'll look for a motion to vote.
So moved.
I'll second.
Hack,
Yes,
Geckerman,
Yes.
Mappy,
Yes.
Goldowski, yes, Jaeger.
Yes.
All right, and our final item on new business is discuss and consider new educator for the Exploration Charter High School contract from our closed section. And what we're approving is for Alex Seidel to be our lead teacher for the approved high school charter school. So I don't know if there's any other questions from the board that you want to ask Dr. Matt on Alex.
I don't have any questions for him, but I know you said something about
Lead teacher.
lead teacher.
Yeah, lead teacher, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Once we're ready, we can make a motion to approve that contract.
So moved.
second,
Mappy,
Yes.
Hack,
yes.
Goldowski, yes, Jaeger,
Yes.
Geckerman.
Yes. All right, then our final item is adjournment, so just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second.
Who seconded it?
I did, sure.
Goldowski, yes, Geckerman,
Yes.
Mappy, Hack,
Yes.
Jaeger.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you.
Good night, everybody.